Are we going yet?
Hello!
Amy says we're going. Hi!
Welcome to the Wednesday Club.
Welcome to the Wednesday Club.
Hi.
Hi.
Wednesday to the Welcome Club.
Oh, the Welcome Club. I like that.
Yeah.
The Welcome. It's like the Welcome Committee, but it's a club for welcome.
It's a welcome club with an orange couch. It just makes me happy.
Welcome.
Apparently, the orange couch was secured for me since I'm a little bit taller, and this is apparently a shorter couch.
It's a nice way of leveling everybody.
You are a fire giant. You're a
I am
large.
Surtur of Muspelheim. Bring me my Twilight Sword, Malekith.
You are a
Cannot
large
rule it
man.
out, honestly.
Large man.
At this point, can't rule out. Could be the end of the world. Could bring about Ragnarok. This guy.
Surtur,
sometimes-
maybe.
Sometimes
Surtur.
you give me a hug, and
see it.
I'm pretty sure you're just resting your chin on the top of my head.
No, sometimes I am.
That's
doing
when
that.
it sinks in.
I get a little indentation
Yeah.
on occasion.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I can
A
feel
little-
it slowly
A little
reflating.
Doctor
Now-
Strange
now-
face in the
yeah.
top
Now
of
I
my
know
head.
you guys are lying because I don't have enough chin to make an indentation. This is not to
just
look
the
like
bristle.
Doctor Strange. This is
the bristle.
This is to hide my very weak jaw.
Well, it's incidental strange then.
Incidental.
Speaking of Strange, you play Doctor Strange.
Sometimes I play Doctor
Sometimes
Strange.
you play Doctor Strange.
Different things, yeah.
Yeah, I always love it when your fans like link me to stuff that you've done and they're like, hey, have you seen this? Do you know? And I'm
Well,
like, yeah.
it's kind of evolved into a bit. At
Well,
this
now
point.
it's a bit, yeah,
It's a
because
bit.
you send us me to the fart dimension and signal boost, which is
Also in Signal Boost, yes.
also in fake time too. Yeah, real time and pretend time.
I did.
Hi everybody, we're the Wednesday Club. I'm Matt Key. We're joined as always.
I'm Amy Dallen. This is Taliesin Jaffe, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Liam O'Brien.
Liam O'Brien.
everybody. Hey, this table is so much bigger than it looks on screen.
Really frightening, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like it's a Justice League table.
It looks
Yeah.
like it should be a rotating bed top.
It looks like someone was
That would
trying
actually
to,
be
like,
more useful because I look at this and I'm like, but if you put like a bowl of M&Ms in the middle, no one would be able to get them.
I feel like this is like a comically large wheel of cheese to win some sort of world's record.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's that big.
What I like to pretend that it's like a plug to a drain, and if we pull it, all of the reality will be sucked into it.
I feel you.
That's
on
very
that.
on theme for today.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you for that segue.
Yeah, what are we talking about today?
Today we're going to be talking about Hellboy, one of my favorites. What's funny is that like when I first started reading Hellboy, it was like 2004, 2005, like was when I first started picking those up.
Yep.
And like I read them all of them in like sight of 2 years. Like I was like, oh my god, I have to read everything. And then like after I read as much of it as I could, I was like, I almost forgot about it until we were like, oh, Liam wants to come on and talk about Hellboy, and I was like, I forgot how much I love Hellboy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he poops it out, only every so often. So
Hellboy or Mignola?
Mignola poop.
Mike
Yeah.
Mignola, yeah.
I don't know what Hellboy's daily is like.
I don't want to know what
Yeah.
his dailies look like.
So for
Hotshot.
those of us who don't know, or
Yeah.
for those out there who don't know, what is Hellboy?
Oh man.
Before we do that, should
Okay.
we address the letters column and say hi to our fans real quick?
Sure. Hi.
Hi. Hold that question.
Sure.
You guys sent us a lot of suggestions for our letter column through your Discord, through our Twitter. Thank you for doing that. There are so many. We are stuck on which one we want to go with. So we're going to continue trying to figure that out. Give us some time, and we will let you know at some point in the future which name we've gone with. But thank you for all of those suggestions.
Thank you so much.
And before we jump into Hellboy, one more thing. Wesley Marshall on Twitter tweeted at us saying that there's perfect timing for Wednesday Club and Hellboy because there's a giant, 50% off sale
50%
on
off,
Comixology?
yep.
So we're going to talk about a lot of Hellboy comics today. They're all fantastic. We're going to give you our favorites and then go to Comixology and buy them. So, all right.
Heck yeah. I think it's on till like the 23rd, and the code is
Yeah.
something like DH50.
And it's a ton of. It's not just Hellboy. It's a ton of Mignola. So BPRD. I don't think Baltimore's on that list, but BPRD and all of Hellboy.
Yeah,
is way
and
up
Hellboy and BPRD are really
Well,
great.
we should
So this
actually,
is the part
we could already
where-
get to this point where Miss Sunflower 94.
I'm in Sunflower 94. Beep, 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 beep. I love
What is
giving fake air
Hellboy,
horn.
and where do we start?
Who's Mignola?
Tell us, O'Brien.
Mignola. I'm worried that I'm just going to ramble excitedly like a
You know
golden
that's what we do
retriever.
here, right?
What do you
on the
think we
show.
do on our show?
Okay. All right, good. Mike Mignola is an artist and writer. He's worked on a lot of stuff before Hellboy. He did some beautiful X-Men covers back in the day.
He did Rocket Raccoon.
Sure did.
He did Tribulations and Triumph.
Triumph and Torment.
Thank you. I always get the name wrong.
It's close enough.
It's close enough, right? But Hellboy, Kinwin drew this for us. Kinwin, baby! You can tell that Kinwin's wearing the mask in that drawing. He's behind it there.
All of our drawings are secretly Ken Wynn's self-portraits.
Yeah,
that's
but he's
the
just
best part
wearing a
about
really
them.
awesome mask.
Is that true?
Cool. Sorry, that's the last time I'm going to derail the conversation.
And some of his X-Men covers are just like pieces of art. I mean, all comics are pieces of art,
Yeah,
but like
but his
really,
are
they're
just,
just so gorgeous. Anyway, before talking about the story or the character or the lore or all this stuff, it is the best mashing together of fairy tale and folklore and real history and horror, vampires, werewolves,
Little Lovecraft.
homunculi, ton of Lovecraft, aliens, a little bit of aliens, all mashed together in the most beautiful gumbo.
It's got a real visual aesthetic that is. I've never seen a comics universe that has such a unified visual aesthetic. Where even if I didn't know what it was, you could turn to any page, and even if no characters that I recognized or knew were on the page, I would still know what Hellboy looked like.
Yeah.
To the point where when a guest artist steps in for a volume or a run, it's still great, but you always go, I need those dark colors with splashes of Hellboy red in sharp,
Which is
hard
credit
lines.
to colorist Dave Stewart, who's been a part of
Yeah.
the team for many, many years now. I think he's been nominated for an Eisner, I think, almost every year that the Eisners have existed. It's like,
never
and
won?
Dave Stewart. I'm pretty sure he's won several times.
he had.
I just think it's funny because it's like, and Dave Stewart. Because, of course, Dave Stewart. So he started writing these in 93, 94?
90, yeah, that's right. 94 is when the first one was published.
Hold on. I wrote down his actual first appearance. Give me a second here.
And is Hellboy in the Marvel or DC universes?
Neither of those things. There was a little couple of issue run where he had a jaunt with Batman for funsies, but it's not.
Yeah, there's been a crossover
Oh, we
too,
all.
but yeah.
But he is his own deal. You can start at the beginning of Hellboy, and you will be introduced to the entire, what is now kind of the expanded Hellboy universe.
Yeah.
But has grown up out of the seed of just this guy in his hands.
That's right.
Speaking of seed,
Yes, if you're going to start Hellboy, you're going to start with this, with
Seed of
Seed of Destruction. 4
this is the one that
issues.
you want to start with.
It is brilliant, and it already hints at, like, I don't know what to talk about first. It already hints at so many things that I remember reading it back in the day and going, this is so cool. How will it ever pay off? How will he ever make this and that and this crazy thing make sense? And he eventually, over decades, explores it all and branches out into, it's not just Hellboy eventually. He works for the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, the BPRD.
That was a really excellent shirt.
Which is just part of the Hellboy story that eventually became its own comic,
Yeah.
which I have not read.
The
which I'm
BPRD
going
stuff?
to do after this. I am going to go use that Hellboy, that Mignola sale on Comixology tonight to buy the entire friggin' run.
Yeah.
And do my homework.
Yeah, these are some great stories too. We'll talk about these characters a little bit later on in the show, and we've discussed Hellboy a little bit more.
And they've
but-
now, because he loves to do things in short runs, so there's now been series that, a couple of different ones each for characters like Lobster Johnson, for Abe Sapien, for The Visitor, for extending into like regular
Baltimore.
novels.
Yeah, he's got also
Yeah,
Baltimore.
if someone were to go out and try to get all of Hellboy right now, it's really somewhere between like 12 and 16-ish maybe volumes that are either full-on stories, or there are 2 or 3 of those are actually collections of shorter stories, and do not skip the shorter stories, because the greater story that he's telling of Hellboy is definitely expanded even in those shorter stories, and they're just so good.
I mean, he's like what's great about what Mignola's done with Hellboy, from my perspective, is he'll do like a 4-page story in like a Dark Horse Presents.
Dark Horse Presents is an anthology title where you'll have short pieces of a bunch of different books being published at that same publisher, Dark Horse, which is only a few years older than Hellboy. What I love is that, like, they were just some upstart, like, couple years in publisher, and they, like, brand new character from this Dark Horse thing, and now it's 25 years later, and it's just like, so good job with that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Remember the guy who brought you that really weird 4-part Rocket Raccoon series that really no one paid attention to? Well, now he's doing this devil character.
I had 2 introductions to Hellboy, and I mean, and my my knowledge is light, but like I remember the two things that happened were Yuri Lowenthal handed me a comic book and a sticker, and like was like, this is important. It was the BPRD logo. It's like, this is important. You need this, and I was, that's odd. Okay. And then he did. There was the Batman, Hellboy. There was the Starman.
Yeah, it's Batman, Starman, and Hellboy.
I was a big Starman nerd. I was really. There were a group
James
of us.
Robinson, Starman.
James Robinson, yeah, Starman, which was like the hipster superhero. There will be an episode where we will get into Starman and what an amazing run that was, and what an interesting run, because I was like almost DC's. Like dipping into this kind of vibe, I feel, and they did it.
Of course, Lowenthal is a big Hellboy fan because, like you and like me, he loves the occult. He's like me, also a big fan of Nazi punching, and there's a lot of Nazi punching.
I was actually really
And
enjoying.
that very satisfying amount of.
I was really enjoying the Indiana Jones-esque real. Like, there's something about World War II pulp if done just right. Where it's just
And it's very, all of
hear
this
the
is
horn
very
section.
inspired by the same pulp that inspired Indiana Jones. So there's a lot there, you know, early on, you're like, yeah, this is very much like an occult version, even more occult version of Indiana Jones. And then it just takes off and
then,
leaves planet Earth.
But it definitely has that vibe, especially at the beginning where I started from page 1 again a couple days ago. I've just been very distracted.
Well, yeah, you've got a
Got a busy week.
you have a very busy week.
Yeah, how are you guys doing? Everything real calm, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, everything's calm for
It's all good.
the two of us, more or less.
Sure.
I mean, but
sure.
you've got a game.
I made bad calls. I'm paying for it. It's all good.
You make great calls, and the rest
Well,
of
you
us
know,
are
when you-
enjoying it.
When you schedule things far down the road, you don't, you know, you're not thinking
You don't-
about.
No.
You don't
no.
consider the intersection of all of those things into 1 week.
Next time anyone invites me to do something here, I'm gonna actually say, I don't know, it's gonna cut into my comic book time. I don't really know how to feel about that. I got a lot of comic books to read.
All right. Well, what do you say we start? Like, this is probably going to be a lot of spoilers for like some of the main story points.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of don't know how to discuss Hellboy without that.
Well, I've got a few things that are probably not too spoilery that we can talk about. A lot of people's introductions are going to be like the movie that came out.
Yeah, they made a couple of movies.
Right.
And they made an animated series. And I
Wait, they made an animated series?
Yeah, I've only seen one or two
I
of
did
them. I
not
don't
know that.
remember
They're
them
okay.
very well.
They're not bad. It's a different vibe from the books, though. It's a little.
Yeah.
It's a little. What would be the word? Flashier? I don't know.
A little brighter.
I think maybe we should talk about, I mean, these things have been around since '94, right? So, and the most recent things came out very recently. In fact, I just read the end of it today. The most recent Hellboy is called Hellboy in Hell. And
Which
I thought
I don't even have yet. I've got to go pick that up.
It's some of the best. It's some of the best. And I didn't realize that it was 2 full volumes, and I actually just like re-binged everything that I had read and then read Hellboy in Hell and went, that's all of it, but didn't realize that there was just a little bit more, which I realized earlier today. So damn good. But without getting into everything that spools out later, maybe we should talk about Seed of Destruction and just like the premise.
Yeah.
Just the premise and the
who is-
promise of what's
Hellboy?
to come.
Hellboy in the BPRD and what's happening?
Okay, so Hellboy was brought into the world, our world, in World War II, where the Russian wizard Rasputin, because
Grigory Rasputin.
the story is full of real historical figures and folklore and myth, but made real. And so Rasputin, who was stabbed and thrown in a river and electrocuted and kicked in the nuts and all the things they did to him, didn't die, and he is in touch with, he's communing with these, he talks about something called the Ogru Jahad, which are these 7 massive dragons. When I say dragons, they're more like, they're Cthulhu.
There we are.
There we go, there's Rasputin.
Rasputin.
And when I say
Fabulous.
dragons, they're more like Cthulhu, Kraken-like tentacled beasts
And they,
living in
like,
space.
deep cosmic.
Yeah.
But I love
nowhere
that
close
because
to
when
Earth.
he uses the word dragon, I imagine what he is conceptualizing
Yeah.
it as. Like,
Yeah.
it's, being a guy from the turn of the last century.
Right. And there are 7 of them, and they're in these giant, like, stone or crystal rocks floating out there. And the story, as it progresses, sort of explains what all that is and what it means. But at this point, you just know that Rasputin is just trying to reach these 7 dragons out in the cosmos somewhere to clean slate the world. And his method of doing that is he's working with the Nazis. He doesn't think much of the Nazis, but he's going to use them for resources.
They are tools to get what he wants.
Right, and there are a couple that he's brought in close to them who are more followers of Rasputin and his vision than they are the Nazis. And he uses their technology and his magic, whatever you want to call it. There he is, doing it right there, to summon the means to unleash them. And it looks like he fails, like there's this huge electrical explosion and nothing happens where they are, and the Nazis there are like, you have fucked up, what have you done, where is our distraction? And he knows that he's done something, but they're too dumb to understand, and somewhere at a different location in Europe, a little baby red boy with a gigantic stone hand is just suddenly brought into the, you're right. And so the first 4 issues, you explore like what the hell, and so he grows up rapidly. So he doesn't spend 40 years to turn into this giant Ron Perlman motherfucker. he grows in like a year into a full-grown man, and but he doesn't know who he is, and he obviously is like this half demonic thing. But what is he? And he was raised by an American, this guy in the BPRD, this American scientist or scholar, Broomholm. Right?
Dr. Broomholm.
Yeah, it looks like Brutenholm, but it's Broomholm, and is raised to be a good boy, good American, like FBI, CIA type, feeling agent.
I have to throw a plug in for you get a couple of childhood stories, even as far as I am, and they're the most charming thing in the universe.
That's what I was just now looking for. This is one of my. I forgot to pull.
Well, see, I'm so torn on this because, like, I don't want to show people, but I do want them to know it's coming, but I don't want them to know it's coming, but they definitely need to get there and read it because it's so good.
There's a breakfast-related short that is very endearing and all good Hellboy fans know about.
It's the best.
Aren't you? You're delving for it.
I'm delving hard, but I can't remember which one.
We also this is apparently a very random sampling that we have out here today. So
yes,
it may not be in here.
So
Rasputin tries to get this kid, and so like years later they cross paths, and things didn't go exactly the way Rasputin thought they would in the beginning. But he's still got his 3 like faithful Nazis, and he's looking for other ways to pull Hellboy to him and get the hand. The hand is the key to unleashing the apocalypse, basically. And then he spends the next 30 years exploring that and different factions and people and gods and creatures trying to get the goddamn hand.
And meanwhile, Hellboy kind of gets a day job.
Yeah.
But his day job is
being a paranormal
excuse me,
expert.
I hear you have a monster.
Yeah. So he goes around fighting mythological legends, but he's just like, fucking pig monster, punch me in the face, god damn it.
I always, some of my favorite stuff about these comics is like, sort of like, I don't know if it's gallows humor, but it's similar to gallows humor.
Yeah.
Where it'll be like, the King Vold short, where he's like, he gets sent to Professor Broomholm, is like, hey, go help my friend out. He goes to Scotland or whatever, and he's standing on a mountain. He's like, so what are we doing? He's like, King Vold always comes through here. He's a ghost of the sky. Like he's a giant, and he's headless. He was decapitated in life, and I want to talk to him. And he's like, I'm gonna have to fight this guy, aren't I? He's like, no, it's cool. We're just gonna talk. And he's like, yeah, it never goes that. I'm gonna have to fight this guy. And sure enough, he ends up having to fight.
Yeah,
it's great.
Part of the charm of the comic is that everybody around him, there are learned professors and deities and demons and spirits, and they're all speaking really like they're speaking in prose and just waxing poetic around him. I realize on like my 3rd binge through the entire series that one of the most frequent things that Hellboy says is someone will say, "And I will take your blood and bathe the steps with it," and he just says, "Nice." Says it all the time.
Yep.
My favorite panel from the early stuff that I thought was sort of a beautiful representation of Hellboy is when he's in the middle of a fight with a terrifying goddess entity who is going on and on. I wasn't sure if that was, I guess it's not a spoiler. Who is going on and on about accept the truth of your existence or be destroyed. You cannot escape your destiny. And Hellboy, falling out of frame, just goes, gonna try.
Gonna try. Yep.
And just to throw this panel, the motion in this panel, the instability. There's this wonderful line early on in Hellboy where he talks about how he spends a whole lot of his life off of his 2 feet because he's flying through the air or falling off of something. And it's just this great sense of like, he's such a solid presence, but he's always falling from one thing to the other, and he's just used to that. That's just situation normal to him.
And if you want to go super comic booky and talk about it, like no one ever really talks about what his abilities or his powers are, but he's got to be like Wolverine. He gets knocked around and smashed into things.
Yeah.
Things are broken over his head constantly, and he just keeps getting up.
Yeah. He like heals fast. You never see him hurt. Like the only time I've ever seen him hurt was I think in Wake the Devil after he blows something up and he ends up kind of passed out and has like this weird vision and then wakes up and he's like completely fine and covered in dust and he's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like is everything okay? How did that shake out?
Yeah. Spoilers. He's from hell, so.
Yes, he lasts a lot. But I think that's actually a really good thing to point out. He is constantly falling and getting back up. I think that's a major core component of the character is that he's running away from his destiny too. Like his destiny is you're gonna destroy the world. You've got this right hand of doom, and this is intended to like its very purpose is to bring about the destruction of the world and humanity.
In the very
burn it
first
to
comic
ash.
books, in Seed of Destruction, even though he doesn't know what it is, even though we as an audience don't know why or what the hell it is, everyone is saying you're an agent of destruction. Embrace it.
And he's like, no, I'm not. I
What if
wasn't
I
raised to
don't?
be that. Yeah.
Nah.
And then you get that wonderful. There's a comic book called Pancakes. We're just gonna leave it at
Oh
that.
yeah, no.
It's 2 pages.
Settle.
So it's 2 pages. I love it. Just
Yeah.
pancakes.
I'm gonna look for. Can I see your number 2 there?
Of course.
I'm trying to find Pico
this-
Russell's intro because
Yeah, a lot of our chat that we're
who's
talking
intro?
about have mostly have some connection to the first movie and are curious how much of a good reflection of the books that first movie is. And I feel like
I don't remember the first movie very well. Was that Rasputin or who was the main bad guy in the first movie?
Rasputin's, I believe so. I mean, I watched it. I'm going to be honest. I did not love the film. It's a good film. I just don't think it's a good reflection of the reflection of these books that I wanted, and that's for a couple of reasons.
it was a different time. They hadn't figured out how to do this.
That's right. If it were
Yeah.
made today,
Which
Well,
it kind
and
of
they're
is
making one
being.
today. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm very hopeful for
yeah,
it.
thank you.
But just visually, I mean, like what they did with Sin City is not the right thing, but his visuals are so distinct that you really want that, and to just take it into, action, like crisp action film,
It got a little bright. is
Yeah,
what I felt
The
That's
watching it.
Hellboy,
right.
the
That's
Hellboy
right.
movies. Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
They got a little bright, and there were characters. I love Abe Sapien. I'm a big. That is a character that I got to know pretty well and really enjoyed.
one of the best in the whole run.
Which is another character I suppose.
Who's
we
Abe
should-
Sapien?
Oh no, please! It's been too long. I want.
Well, the
people to go
BPRD
through it.
is populated by tons of discarded freaks and science experiments. And
Yeah.
Abe, you find out, again, I'm going to spoil anything that's in not anything, but a lot of things in Seed of Destruction. His backstory, which is just like half a page, is
There's Abe.
there he
Yeah.
is. He's Fishman, right? Hellboy tells somebody else on the team that you can see it just below there.
Yeah.
He was found in an old abandoned like underground basement, and the date, it says Ichio Sapien on it, and the date on it is 1865, the day that I think that Lincoln was killed.
Yeah, it's the-
he's
it's the
found in
same-
Washington
yeah.
D.C.
So he's a lab experiment from Lincoln's time that they found centuries later and woke up, and now he runs around the world with Hellboy and other.
Ichthyo, by the way,
Ichthyo.
is Greek for fish. So he's Fishman.
Fishman.
Ichthyo Sapien.
Hellboy and Fishman.
And since he was born the day that Abe Lincoln was killed, he's Abe Sapien.
And I don't know if this is intentional or not. It probably is because it's Mike Mignola. But Ichthyo, has a very strong connection to early Christianity. Ichthus, the Ichthus, because the Greek spelling of Ichthus, I can't remember exactly how it's spelled, but like the chi in the front is the first letter for Christ. The next word, the next letter, God, I can't remember how it's spelled in Greek. But the next letter was what you started the Holy Spirit with. So like it was almost an acrostic for all the main elements of Christianity, early Christianity, before it was actually Christianity.
Is that why the fish thing is a fish?
That's where the
Yes, it
fish thing
is,
came
yeah.
from, because the fish symbol came to symbolize where you could have underground Christian meetings, because for the first 150, 200 years of Christianity, it was illegal. It was outlawed by Rome.
Pisces vivisectus? I remember the name of it. The
Yeah,
fish
well, they
symbol.
just,
Okay.
I always was taught that it was just called the ichthus.
The first rule about Fish Club:
You don't talk about fish.
don't talk about Fish Club.
But it was until like
rule is go upstream to
Constantine
spawn.
and 300 that Christianity is not outlawed anymore, and you can practice Christianity without being thrown to the lions or becoming a martyr. But for 200 years, essentially, I want to go worship the Christ, but if I do that, I'll be flayed by the Romans. There's a fish etched into the wall. I bet they meet here on Sabbath.
Instead, it's just a sushi bar.
All right, I'm gonna. The introductions to these volumes are really wonderful because
Yeah.
you get a selection of commentary from various luminaries. But this one was written by P. Craig Russell, who's a fantastic artist who does a lot of. He's contributed to Sandman. He's done his own sort of fairy tale work.
What is it that disturbs you, Stephen?
All your people work on Doctor Strange. I love it. So he opens his introduction by bragging because he says, "I own 5 pages of the original artwork to Mike Mignola's Hellboy story, The
Jerk.
Corpse."
I love The Corpse. That's one of
He
my
goes,
favorites.
5. If you all want to hate me now, it's okay. I can handle it. I own 5 pages of The Corpse. That's the opening to this introduction by this also legendary comic book artist who goes on to talk about his sort of interactions with Mike Mignola. He worked as his inker for a long time. He makes a fascinating observation that I'd never seen in there where he was like, isn't it strange in comics how we don't say I inked his pages, we say I inked him, as if it is his personality and his person on the page that you are going over, and it speaks to the relationship that's pretty unique to that art form. But he says later on, although already a devotee of Mignola's Hellboy, it was the publication of The Corpse that rekindled my youthful enthusiasm for the form of comics. It was and remains absolutely unique, with a deft wit, a sometimes gruesome sense of humor, and at all times a formal elegance. It is this formal elegance that harkens back to those earlier works that so excited my imagination as a young artist. He's talking about Barry Windsor Smith and Kirby and a lot of these others. It is not just in Mike's drawing that I take such pleasure, but in all the disparate elements that make simple drawing fit into the larger context of graphic storytelling. It lies in the powerful use of black, the clever use of expositional panels, the careful attention to the rhythm of balloon placement and sound effects, color as mood, architectural detail. Mike seems to be the only artist in comics to realize that not all graveyards come from New England. And I love like artists on other artists where they're like, we noticed.
Yeah.
And most importantly, the plasticity of his layouts, the way he arranges a page. His panel arrangements seem to breathe, their size and proportion one to the other in quick and elastic response to the needs of the story. It is a sensual pleasure to read these stories. And then he talks a little bit more about reading, and he closes with, I have 5 pages of original art from The Corpse. Did I mention that?
Yeah, he's a jerk. He's a jerk.
But he nails it. He nails it.
Yeah, Alan Moore wrote an introduction, I believe, to the second book. I can't remember, but he says, "Hellboy is a gem." Alan Moore, Watchmen. Alan Moore.
Alan Moore never says Alan Moore is a gem, to be
Yeah,
fair.
Alan Moore says of Hellboy and Mike Mignola,
there it is.
Hellboy is a gem, one of considerable size and a surprising luster. While it is obviously a gem that has been mined from that immeasurably rich seam first excavated by the late Jack Kirby, it is in the skillful cutting and setting of the stone that we can see Mignola's sharp contemporary sensibilities at work. To label Hellboy as a retro work would be to drastically misunderstand it. This is a clear and modern voice, not merely some ventriloquial seance echo from beyond the grave.
I've never heard ventriloquial used as an adjective.
Me either.
Beautiful.
My history as a comic book reader is like 12, 13 is when I started. And all through high school, and I collected about 3 long boxes worth of comic books. I started reading comic books because of fucking Dungeons and Dragons.
Yay!
Yeah.
I collected
Do you
like
play?
I want to dabble.
We could find some people.
But I got the Dragonlance comic books and the Forgotten Realm comic books. I was just looking for more Dragonlance material because I was so obsessed. And then it led into more comic books, and Jim Lee X-Men, Death, Bachelot, Sandman, but Hellboy just grabbed me, and I stopped reading everything else. I went off to acting school. I was going to be a serious theater actor, and I didn't have time for superheroes and spandex anymore. But I always kept with Hellboy, my whole life. And then I think because of my constant proximity to Taliesin Jaffe, I started reading comic books heavily again a couple of years ago. And now I'm going back and reading all the greats that people have told me about for ages. And I'm buying comic books faster than I can read them. But I will say, in my opinion, that there is no more beautiful comic book page than Mignola's Hellboy. Of everything I've read, everything I've seen, it is still the most beautiful. And what you just read about how elegant it is. I mean, it's the juxtaposition of the beauty of the pages and how gorgeously they're laid out, and how much darkness is in it, and the sort of sadness and melancholy that is in so many of the pages, set in this rich, dense world of all the world's mythologies, with his dry wit the whole time. There is nothing like it.
Yeah. I mean, and what's so funny about the Hellboy stuff, I completely agree with you. Like, Mignola draws incredibly beautiful pages, but it's such simple line work.
He makes it look easy.
Like, he makes it look easy, but it's just like, there's
I would go back to that Liz page. Look at how beautiful.
Yeah.
Look
like,
at
it's such
how
a
beautiful.
strange simplicity.
Look at the story told in that picture.
Where do we go? Here? We go
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
To the yellow
Look at
man.
how amazing this picture of Rasputin is down here.
Oh.
Amazing. And look at the sadness and the
Like, there's like a sadness and an
just the
elegance to
grace
it, you know?
in that picture. She's a pyrotechnic. Is that the right word? That's not-
Pyrokinetic.
Pyrokinetic. Thank you. So that's why there's flames coming out of her head. There's just nothing else like it.
Comic book artists they are the scene designer, they are the director, they are also the actors. So to be able to lay out your circumstances that well, and also have so much emotion in each page is just incredible. Hell of a set of skills.
Another thing that strikes me off in reading comic books is I'm always impressed that some words and some pictures on the page can actually invoke fear in me too, and it's so good at being.
That's the segue.
Is it not strange that sheep's guts should hail men's souls out of their bodies, but for comics?
I'm gonna. My wife doesn't care about comic books, which is fine. That's fine. It's totally fine. But I remember in the early 2000s reading one of my favorite shorts of his is called The Wolves of St. August. It's a werewolf story. And
It's
it is
amazing.
It is so cold and frightening. And there's a 3 or 4 page sequence in this book that I think about all the time. Anytime I'm thinking about story told through comic art. And I want to share it. It doesn't spoil like the greater story of Hellboy, but it's just too good to pass up. So what do I do to make it? There it is. All right, so Hellboy is with one of his partners in like an old abandoned church, right? He loses her, she falls down. I'm just gonna skip past this. She goes down. Okay, just the single page. Just her free falling through space. Okay, there's that. Then we go to here. So she crashes, looks around. All right, clearly this kid is a ghost, right? Great, creepy already. She says, little girl, what are you doing here? She says, I am awake. I cannot sleep. I cannot go to heaven. Why does God hate me? And then she knows she's looking at a ghost because she works with the paranormal. She says, oh, sweetie, no, nobody hates you. And then from off camera, essentially, he does come on up to the top. He made me this. And I remember reading this to my wife in the dark in our bedroom with just the lamp, and both of us just going, ugh! It is harrowing. And then cut to her, like over here, I don't know how to work my fingers, just crying. And then Hellboy comes up and says, what is it? Sorry, she says, sorry, my first ghost, rough way to start. Which again is just Hellboy's sort of
rough way to start.
Because the context in that story, I think, is that she's been like an academic and a theoretician, and she's like, you pushed me to do more field work. Let's do more field work.
I think that's
like,
Kate Corrigan.
That's right, Kate Corrigan.
Oh wow.
She's like one of their main researchers and professors in the office, and Hellboy's always like, when are you going to come to the field with us? When are you going to come to the field with us? Yeah.
And that's her first foray.
That's her first foray is oh, werewolf castle, like ghost werewolf castle. Like not only werewolves, ghost werewolves.
And it's interesting because Hellboy has so much matter-of-factness about this stuff, and I found that reading through these in this way, so does Mignola, because he has these little introductions before the stories, and he'll sort of casually be like, oh, you know, I read the story once and I liked it, so I kind of moved it here and I combined it with this other thing, and then I just added that part because I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's making it sound like I assembled a sandwich, I had some roast beef and a thing, and we're like, but the Sistine Chapel came out the other side. What?
And there's an interesting thing about characters like this who kind of I remember this terrible, just god awful like film from the early '50s called I Accuse My Parents.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen.
It's terrible. It's just terrible. But there's like the guy who works at the diner. The kindly man in his 50s, the portly man in his 50s who works in the diner is very. You're doing all right, kid. You need a sandwich. What do you need? There's this sort of serene. There's this version of like an older serene man who's just kind of kind and helpful and got his shit together and is a little gruff but kind of like a friendly gruff that shows up in a lot of these books. I've noticed that it's a character archetype that shows up in a lot of cosmic horror books. Robot Man from Doom Patrol.
You know what? This really reminded me of that.
Reminds me of Robot Man so much. Is that there's that similar character of I'm just a guy living in a robot body, one day at a time. I put my legs on one day at a time, like every other robot. And Hellboy's got a little bit of that. It's like, I put my glove on one glove at a time and stop there.
Yeah. So, like, speaking of the introductions,
salt of the earth.
Yeah, well, and somebody compared it to. I was talking to Rick earlier before the show, and there's sort of. It's something it shares in common with something like Ghostbusters, where you combine the crazy fantastic with the sort of blue collar, here's the number to call, you got a ghost problem, we got someone we can send.
It's actually a really good call.
There's
a
something
bit of
about that
It's
archetype.
like a little
There's something
darker.
about that archetype of somebody who's they're not. They should be in over their head, but they've just sort of decided that they're not.
Yeah. So you mentioned the intros that he has. So a lot of these, the trade paperbacks, which is going to be the easiest way to read Hellboy.
Or the beautiful library edition hardcovers, if you can find them.
Yeah.
They've got these fuzzy black covers, and they're printed at a large size, and they're
Several people
very
in the office
beautiful.
have them and chose not to bring them because they didn't want us putting
Chris Lockey.
dirty fingers on
Oh, I
them.
mean,
Chris Lockey.
I failed. I have them as well, and I meant to bring them today, and I just life
We
got
would have ruined them.
past me.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
So,
for the best.
like Seed
You
of
can see what we're doing with
Destruction, which is the first volume, that was, I believe, a 4 to 6 issue miniseries, right? Like
Four
you could,
issues, yeah.
4 issues, and you could buy it on the rack and stuff like that. But then you have stuff like the Dark Horse Presents and stuff, where you get the shorter stories. And the Chain Coffin, which is volume 3, the very first one is called The Corpse, and I just wanted to read his introduction because Mike Mignola writes introductions to the stories. You see there. So I want to read The Corpse because this is one of my favorite all-time Hellboy stories, is The Corpse. About 15 years ago, I discovered an Irish folk tale called Tiago Cain and the Corpse. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Probably not.
And I decided right then and there that one day I would adapt it for comics. Well, that sort of happened. In 1995, someone at Dark Horse approached me with the idea of doing a Hellboy story, which would appear in Capital City's Advanced Comics catalog in 2-page installments.
Brief time out here. Remember our episode about the distribution wars? This is in the time before Diamond was a monopoly. Capital was one of the other distributors. And this is just one of those weird, like, industry things. Something as strange as how do shops buy their comics and how do those companies compete for attention could give rise to something like an entire newsletter where they would try to spice it up with some kind of cool content. And somebody would be like, get the Dark Horse guy to do one of his Red Guy stories.
And if you weren't already in love with Amy, now you are. Advanced catalog in 2-page installments. 2 pages? How the hell do you do that? The challenge was to come up with a story where some new strange thing would happen every 2 pages. I dug out Tiago Cain, thinking of 3 different churchyard incidents, added bits and pieces from other English and Irish folk tales, the Changeling, the Bouncing Jock, Ginny Greenteeth, etc. And there you go. Several
There you
people,
go.
yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Several people I respect and admire consider this to be the best Hellboy story I've done. See Craig Russell's introduction. I guess I would agree, but when I first did The Corpse, I was convinced that it was the all-time worst story I had ever done. I don't remember why. Oh well.
Artists!
So the story of The Corpse. I'm gonna not ruin anything, but the basic story is a poor family in 1959. Their baby is kidnapped by a goblin and they
Swapped for a goblin.
swap for a goblin. That's right. They're like, our baby's acting strangely, and Hellboy comes out, uses iron on it. Iron hurts
it's
them.
a horseshoe, right?
Yeah.
It's a
Touches
horseshoe,
it.
and it's like, he's like, yeah, this is
Not your baby.
that's not your baby. That's a goblin. Don't worry, I'll take care of it.
Goblin
Goblin
Republic.
elf?
Yeah, goblin elf.
Do they
let's
identify
see.
what are changelings?
It's a changeling of some sort. I don't know that they ever actually.
I'm sure it's just one of the fairy folk.
Yeah,
It's
There we
it's a
go.
fairy
That's
folk.
it. Fairy folks. Iron. Of
So
course.
he goes out to figure out
a book over there.
where this baby has gone because the goblin runs away, and he makes a deal with 3 or 4 other goblins who are carrying a corpse with them to bury it. And he says, "All right, look, I'll bury your corpse for you if you'll tell me where this baby is." And they're like, "All right, there's 4 places you can go to where you can bury this corpse." And the corpse is excited to jump on to Hellboy. He's like, "Oh boy!" And it latches onto Hellboy. And Hellboy has to go bury this corpse, and
Just holding around his neck, talking to him the whole time.
yeah,
Well,
the
and
whole
it's-
time, and
it's sort of
Hellboy
this
hates it.
Sweet little dilemma where they're kind of like, look, we liked this guy, but we can't bury him. We're goblins.
We
we
can't
can't go in a
enter church
church.
yards, yeah.
So if you can do us a solid, we'll do you. It's very much like we can make a deal here.
Yeah.
The rules won't be fair, but we'll stick to them.
Yeah, we'll stick to the rules, and we'll bury, and you'll help us bury this guy. He's a friend of ours. I can't remember what his name was. Oh, Tammy, I believe it was Tammy O'Clany from Killarney was his name.
And then Hellboy basically turns into a door-to-door salesman, trying to say, can I put my corpse in here? No. What about here? No.
What about here? No, but each no is kind of delivered in a different way.
Yeah.
A different kind of terrifying no.
No. Until the very end when he's attacked by something and has to figure it out. But it's honestly one of the best. It's one of my favorite Hellboy stories, and it's in volume 3.
And fun fact, the baby that he does save comes back in a big way later.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Does he really?
I haven't gotten there
yes,
yet, I guess.
she does. The baby does come back as an important character later, yeah.
Which volume?
Toward the end. Toward the end.
So that's part of the fun is that since he's been around since 1944
Yeah.
and he grows up fairly quickly, you get all these decades of sort of I was just enjoying, I'm only 4 volumes in I think at this point, but I'm just enjoying jumping around to be like, all right, about how old is he? What has he seen so far? Okay. And just sort of placing him because he can have different personas because you're looking at different parts of his life in all these standalone stories.
Yeah, and there's a few instances where that baby, where you're like, well, that's the last time I'm going to see that baby, where you think it's just like a throwaway one-time monster or a person, and he brings them back in a huge way, and you can tell I can't tell, but I'll find myself wondering, is that the plan always, or do you just go, yeah, I like that baby, let's reincorporate?
So our chief just texted me that Dark Horse is live tweeting our show.
What?
Hi, Dark Horse.
Hi, Dark Horse.
guys.
Thanks for making great comics like Critical
Yeah,
Role.
thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for all the Hellboy over the years, Dark Horse.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so your comic is at Dark Horse.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool,
Which
right?
I shit a brick once that was
I
solidified.
think
Crazy.
I'm not a part of that comic, and I should have. I was like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
My friends are in a Dark Horse comic?
Yeah, I mean, it's
so
my
cool.
favorite. Hellboy is my favorite comic book, so to be sharing shelf space with it is kind of
I'm
endearing.
quite pleased by a lot. I like their Conan books. I like the Goon. And I like lots of stuff. Dark Horse.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to do a Dark Horse episode.
We've been talking about Dark
We've
Horse.
been talking about it. It's on our list. We should
on the
just do
list.
one, yeah. And Dark Horse, we'll let you know when we do that.
Oh yeah.
So,
And at some point today, we will, of course, be doing our 5-minute topics. So if you guys can start throwing those at us, we will do, I don't know if we warned you about this, but they will throw some kind of question at us, and we
Great.
will all attempt to answer it. And it hopefully will be less depressing than the one that Mackie still has not recovered from.
What do you mean?
And because the chat does, in fact, ask questions. Also, there was a question. This is actually, who was this? I came for Chaz. Was curious for a lot of people
those of you
who
who
were
don't know.
introduced to Hellboy through the movies. Who is the Visitor and who is Lobster Johnson?
Well, I could talk about Lobster Johnson.
Visitor might be a little tricky.
I can't really speak about the Visitor. I haven't read
brain
any of the
farting on the
stuff.
Visitor.
It's a relatively recent collection, but I don't know what it's about because, again,
Yeah.
I've been selling these for 10 years without bothering to sit down and read them.
Yeah. Lobster Johnson, however,
Lobster Johnson
is
we can
fantastic.
solve.
Yeah,
You
and we
may
can
have to go
talk
for
about that
yourself.
without spoiling anything, really.
Yeah. Do you want to take it? And
Well,
you're
I
the
bet
guest.
you know more because he's got a whole book based on him.
I
at
haven't
this
read
point.
the
I
Lobster
only
Johnson
know
book.
Lobster Johnson's appearance in Hellboy proper, but he's got
Same.
He spun off into his own thing. So just as these books are inspired by pulp.
Right, from the 20s, 30s,
Right.
40s, yeah.
And Lobster Johnson is essentially a pulp hero that Hellboy loved reading when he was young, and I guess as he grew up, it would be like me. It would be like reading about Dick Tracy and thinking like that's a great character, and then finding out that Dick Tracy
Tracy's-
was real.
yeah.
So Lobster Johnson is this
Phantom,
paranormal adventurer, and it basically like the Phantom dressed in like
He's got the
Billy
he's got the
Zane
little side
costume
button,
and
side button thing in the
yeah,
in the,
yeah,
in
and a
the
little
awesome
lobster
goggles.
claw
Yeah,
up
lobster
on his
claw.
head. I just hit myself in the weightlifting injury on my forehead. I'm glad we're looking at Lobster Johnson.
Right there.
There he is. Oh, it's on his chest.
Yeah,
And
the lobster claw.
But he has, I think, a lobster in his hand, and he like, whenever he knocks you
Yeah.
out, he burns his
Burns
brand
the-
into your
yeah.
forehead, and it's that lobster claw.
Ooh.
He says, I was
Intense.
reading something just now. He said something really cool.
And so you find out that the comic strip was really just like, I don't know if it was a cover, but he was a real guy who was running around the world doing stuff. And then when Hellboy meets him, he might not be alive.
just
That's it. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I have to go. I have a lot of comics to read.
I know this is
Yeah.
so much. Oh, here we are. Here's Lobster Johnson.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, the comic that he's referencing, I believe is Conqueror Worm. That's the volume, the name
Yeah,
of the
that's
volume.
right. The
That is
Conqueror Worm.
literally what I just picked up.
So,
So that works out well.
There's even more spin-offs. There's a Witchfinder spin-off, which
Yes.
I remember seeing.
That's hard to talk about because there's a character in the Hellboy series who's in Seed of well, he's in the earlier stuff, but you don't really know who he is.
Are you talking Torch of
So
Liberty?
just had to find a moment for come and
No.
taste lobster claw. Which just
Yeah, that's what
Oh
I was.
my
I was trying to
goodness.
think of what he
I was
said.
trying to
I'm glad
remember
you found
his
that.
guess. This is a
When he like slaps your forehead.
Here, I got you. You got me. Whoever's got.
There's a moment, I think it's actually in Wake the Devil, which is also one of my
Volume
favorites.
2.
Oh, it's
which
so
is
good.
the second main story, where there are sort of supernatural entities, to quote Matt Mercer, watching Hellboy get his ass kicked. And one of them is, you saw on one of these pages, is like the fairy king. He's like the
It was in the
king
opening
of
to
the
the corpse.
Tuatha
He
De
was-
Danann, which are like the fairy folk
You
of
were.
Ireland.
It was the opening to the corpse. If you wanted, if you were looking for that picture.
Yes.
One of them is the Baba Yaga,
it's the Baba Yaga.
which is one of my favorite
I
characters in the
love
whole run.
The Baba Yaga.
Love the Baba Yaga.
I just love the fairy tale of Baba Yaga. How
Yeah.
she lives in a
In a
house with a chicken leg.
Chicken leg.
I
Chicken leg,
actually,
right.
I pulled the art of that as
Russian
well.
folklore, yeah.
Russian folklore. Yeah. I hate to put you on the spot, Chief, but I have that.
I have
pulled.
the page if he doesn't. So. 'Cause I-
See, you basically got like the King of the Fairies, the Baba Yaga, and there's a third masked figure that you don't know who it is, and that sort of plays into the Witchfinder.
Oh, exciting!
But that's
Because I have
not
noticed
revealed
those
who he
three
is
at the
till
point
way
where I
later.
am, but we haven't gotten all of that info yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's late game where you find out who that character is that you see early on.
And one of my and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but one of my favorite things about the world that Mignola has built with Hellboy and BPRD and Baltimore, all that stuff, is that like you'll have like a character in Wake the Devil or Seed of Destruction where it's just a one-off, like the baby that you just talked
Yeah.
about in the corpse. It's just it's an NPC.
Yeah.
But then in Volume 7, it's like the entire story hinges on that NPC that you forgot from Volume 2 that was never going to be a thing, but now is. And he does that everywhere.
And what I didn't realize, what I didn't know to expect jumping in here is that it has a lot of these qualities that make Sandman one of my very favorite comics. Where like you'll see something in the background that will be drawn on later, and they're the center of their own story, and they're drawing on a similar well of fairy tale and mythological sources. But I do love how, at least so far in Hellboy, like where Sandman takes delight in shifting to different genres and formats and being a different thing each time you see it, in the Nature of Dreams, Hellboy has this amazing like all of the adventures are different, but it always feels exactly like Hellboy.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
grounded in the same.
Yeah.
So far.
really heavily on the same piece of Earth. Whereas Sandman's very flighty.
Question:
Or Fables. Fables also reminds me of this.
How does a writer artist accomplish that? Like, what is the actual? Is it through the artwork? Is it through the?
Artwork helps.
Artwork helps.
You know, is it? But like BPRD feels like it's very rooted in the same universe as well.
But since we haven't mentioned it, he has. How long did he? How far did he get in Hellboy before he was having other people draw along, or has it mostly been?
Oh,
Like,
it was a while.
Duncan
It was
Fegredo
quite a
worked
while.
with him
There's
on this
one-
one, which is number 8.
Not Wake the Devil.
And
Stranger
BPRD
Places,
was
no.
collaborative basically from the start, I think.
What are they called? I think the first time you start seeing other. Let me see. I had a couple of notes here. The Troll Witch and Others is one collected book. So you've got Seed of Destruction, which is the original 4, then Wake the Devil, which is a follow-up, amazing. The Chained Coffin, and there's the Chained Coffin and the Right Hand of Doom, which have very important story elements, but they're collections of shorter stories. Then you go to the Conqueror Worm, which is another long run. Then you go to Strange Places, which is collections again. Hellboy heads off to Africa.
That's as far as I've gotten.
Right, but it's still all Mignola. I think the Troll Witch and Others is the first time you start seeing guest artists come in on Hellboy.
Yeah, certainly on BPRD. I don't know that he's actually drawn any of those stories.
No,
I think
he does
those are all.
covers and that's it.
Yeah, but like I think those are all drawn and even written by other people. Like he just kind of edits and oversees.
Right.
I think he is writer or co-writer, I think, of nearly all of it. Some of the
Yeah.
novels, I believe, have been fully other folks working with him. But it is interesting that, like, he sets such a standard and has such a distinctive voice that, like, the artists he's worked with, like Duncan Fegredo, like eventually Gabriel Ba, they are an absolute murderer's row of amazing talent. Like, you couldn't ask for sort of better people to be filling in your world, but there is, and I've just, as a retailer, I've noticed this for years, there's something particularly compelling about Mignola doing Mignola's world that sort of this is like this gold standard.
There's nothing else like it, so it's just hitting on all cylinders when you're getting him doing the art on top of the writing.
Yeah.
And the magic trick that he's pulling off that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago is just he's pulling from all over the world. He's doing ancient Sumeria and Russia and
Well, and then he's
he
got like
visits
ancient
Japan.
Japanese.
Yeah, visits
folklore.
Japan. It's everything, but he makes it feel like this cohesive whole. And then he's splicing in, like 1800s England and Hellboy in Hell, which is where it is right now. I mean, like, it's in the title, he's in hell. Just, it is such a wild
Capital
ride.
city of hell is Pandemonium, right?
Pandemonium, yeah. I just want to go read it again.
I really need to go pick. I meant to stop by your shop today and pick it up, but
We can't keep that book in stock to save our lives.
oh, well,
We
that's a
just need
good.
to
That's a
start
good problem
ordering
to
it
have.
by the box.
Yeah.
So
but I love it.
let's talk about BPRD and some of his allies. What do you think?
Go for it.
Sure.
You've got to lead that discussion.
All right, so we've covered Abe Sapien a little bit.
Just a little. Yeah.
He has his own ongoing. Is it an ongoing comic now, or?
Most of these comics are in short runs, even if
Yeah.
they do several in succession.
Oh,
BPRD is
no.
the closest to having a second, like, long running. Oh,
I'm fine.
It's just water.
Let's just water.
it's very Abe Sapien appropriate.
Yeah, that's actually perfect timing for an Abe Sapien conversation to spill water on yourself.
Aethio Sapien. Now I'm just distracted by
And then
reading
I
the
just- I was
description.
like,
It's
you
easy
looked
to
it
get
up like you were
distracted with
going
all of these. Yeah.
I was just showing off this first volume of Abe Sapien, which is mostly. This one is Mike Mignola writing and Jason Sean Alexander drawing.
So I
and
don't
it's
want to
his
give
first
away
solo adventure.
any of his so for like 10, 15 years we don't know anything about Abe Sapien. But then they finally started getting into his actual backstory, who he actually is, where he actually comes from, and how he started off. And I believe it's in those Abe Sapien books. I feel like maybe in the third volume of BPRD, I forgot to write that down, the volume name, but I think the third volume with like the that's the drowning. There was another story. God, I forgot to write it down. It's killing me that I did that. But the third volume, they start to get into his actual backstory, and it is amazing.
Sold.
It is amazing. It is Civil War era, secret society, occult goodness, and it's awesome. And I was upset when I read it today. I was like, how have I missed reading this story? I will read it tonight.
I love books that make you angry that they hadn't been in your lives already.
Yeah, and like when I was getting ready for the show last night, I meant to text you guys, but I got so caught up. I was like, I forgot how much I love this book because the mythology is so rich and like it's so like there's so much like cosmic goodness, but like also grounded humanity, and there's so much dense philosophical like. I feel like there's very much a pessimistic run through it where Hellboy is fated to destroy humanity and he doesn't want to do that. And Liz Sherman is fated to be this pyrokinetic
Yeah, Liz
and she
has
doesn't
some
want
rough,
to. Yeah.
I love that. That was an interesting thing encountering the story for the first time. I had met the version of the character in the movies, but I wasn't really familiar. And I liked very much how, especially in the early Hellboy stories, they don't spend a lot of time with her, but you very quickly get a window into her experience. There's that wonderful note about, she's just come back to rejoin, and then she sort of explains to the new kid that she has quit 13 times since she joined the BPRD. Because
She's just always quitting, yeah.
Yeah. And it's, she's a fascinating character, and one where they're not afraid, at least where I am, they're not afraid to do the darkness, but it also doesn't seem like they're being edgy for edgy's sake. They're just like, here is the serious shit that happened to this person.
Yeah.
No, I would never use the word edgy for these books at all. They're melancholy a lot, but the more the gallows humor defines it, I think.
Yeah, I feel like these are like in trying to think of like the actual tone of these books, it's like every single book is like a cemetery at 3 a.m. Where you're just like, I'm in a graveyard, like a Victorian, like an ancient
They're
Northeastern.
somber when necessary.
Somber, they're
And sometimes
morbid,
the things that he's punching in the face are edgy. But
Yeah.
we're with him and he's not.
And he's not edgy. He's like he's over it. He's very much over. He's like, oh God, it's another monster to fight.
Which of these
All right.
goddamn
I'd go so
charms
far
is
as
the one that's going to help me?
Because I was also, and the chat was doing this to me, having that meditation on the notion of the blue collar occultist versus the notion of a white collar occultist, which would be Doctor Strange.
Which would be Doctor Strange.
Is very much is the
Ivory Tower
notion
occultist,
is that the bonus that you get with that more street smart rough and tumble occultist is that when it gets edgy, it's such a good foil to like, oh my God, shut up.
Yeah.
It is such a nice way of taking the stuffing out of the more pompous aspects of this kind of storytelling that can get. I mean, Doctor Strange at his worst can be a very pompous book.
Yeah, very.
Could we just have a moment of silence to think about a Hellboy, Doctor Strange?
Why has that not happened?
Why has that not happened? Dark Horse, you're watching our show right now. Do that.
Oh, they probably know exactly why that hasn't happened. You know. I totally understand if you can't tell us.
So good, it would be so good.
But can you like just tell us? We want to know. Like that should actually happen.
That would be a great. I mean, like.
Oh, Dr. Fate meets Hellboy meets Doctor Strange.
Well, there was also the talk of like the difference between John Constantine and I will always pronounce that way. I don't care what anybody.
It's okay.
And
That's actually right. I just can't do it right. So Constantine it is.
Okay, I'll never mock anyone for any other pronunciation. They're both right.
Jiff.
Yeah. Sometimes the right answer is wrong.
I don't think you pronounce John Jiff. I think it's John. I don't think it's Jiff Constantine.
But like Constantine versus Hellboy, of like Constantine's, it has so much snark, and his world is so much crueler on a weird level, and he's cruel kind of with it, whereas Hellboy is not.
Well, but I
like,
think
putting them all in a line, like Constantine to Doctor Strange to Hellboy, is a really fascinating.
if I think where that comes from though is the sort of underlying hope of Hellboy, where it seems like Constantine, if I'm
You can say Constantine too.
Thank
okay,
you.
yeah.
It seems like Constantine has just accepted like, we're fucked. I'm going to do my best to keep it back, but we're fucked. Whereas Hellboy seems to have like just enough where it's like, you're destined to murder the world and burn it. Liz Sherman is destined to burn everybody around her all the time. Abe Sapien and Roger the Homunculus, they're both destined to always be monsters who are just trying to do the right thing. All of these people are fucked no matter what, but they are trying so hard to hope against hope, whereas Constantine is just like, yeah, whatever.
There's
like,
a fatalism to him, and like he really has accepted the notion that everybody he comes in contact with that is going to suffer for it. And
Yeah.
he
Or
really-
he's got the posture of having accepted it, and the tension of whether he really does
Does or
accept
doesn't.
it is part of what makes you connect to him.
Sure.
But
No, that is a very fair point. But yeah, there's a weird fatalism to him though, where
Yeah.
he's never surprised when it all goes horrible. He's just like, this is me again, being me and ruining everything.
Yeah.
I'll walk away now and smoke more cigarettes.
But with Hellboy, it's like I can push back these cosmic gods for one more day. Like I can get us one more day. You know, like
Yeah,
there's
there's an optimism.
just a tiny bit of hope that is like I think that's what resonates with me is because you know as an ex-seminarian what
It's a splash of red on a black page. It was just like just
no, but I think that there is something to
You're
that. Like-
absolutely no, I'm with you.
Also, I mean, half the time he's just going off of past experience. There are these giant tentpole moments where he gets his ass handed to him,
Yeah.
and it's the fate of the world. But the other half of the time, he's dealing with like the corpse or some troll under a bridge, and it's really like a plumber going like, "This is a really backed up toilet, and it's gonna fucking suck, but whatever. I gotta
That's
do my
actually
job."
a really good way to
Yeah.
put it. It's like, drain's clogged again.
Yeah.
Chirp.
He's gonna get shit on him. It's gonna smell bad, but at the end of the day, the toilet's gonna clear.
The work has to be done. But yeah, you're right. There are those tentpole moments where he's like, oh, the Agdra. Why am I forgetting that? The Agdra
Agdru
Jihad.
Agdru Jihad.
Oh my God, the crystal's been cracked and the Nazis sent a capsule into space and here it comes and we're all gonna die. And he's like, nope, I got it. I can fix this. I can fix this. Just everyone calm down. We're not all gonna die. Let's all have a little bit of hope. I've got it. It's gonna suck, but I've got it. And I think that's what, like, at least for the ex-seminarian in me, that's what resonates with me, where it's like, there's always that one bit of hope. Like, yeah, the world sucks and it's all going to hell in a handbasket, but
Yeah.
we can fix it. We can fix this.
And
like, yeah.
Seed of Destruction, it's these three people who, in different ways, the world has told them that they're losers or to be shunned.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have pulled through that first 4 issues if Abe hadn't come in when he did and Liz hadn't put a spin on the situation the way she did.
They save each other in a very interesting way,
Yeah.
where there's not a lot of like, it's light on dialogue in terms of they don't sit mean like if it hadn't been for you I would have blah, but it's all in the story. It's
Yeah.
in the actions
Yeah.
and the way they treat each other.
Yeah, he's storytelling through the action, and the dialogue is sparse, but it's surgical.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like his storytelling points, his artwork, his dialogue, it's all very minimal, but he knows how to use it. It's surgical and precise. The only thing that's not surgical and precise is the breadth of the actual mythology behind everything that he's telling. Like you can imagine like Mignola as a madman at his desk, he's barely got anything on it, but behind him he's got yarn and
Has to.
paperwork and just like just this conspiracy theory board, but like the rest of his
and
room
urine.
is
History
all pristine. Yeah.
History books, mythology books, all. I mean, he's got to have
Well, you get that
archaeology
beautiful
tchotchkes
collection.
all over his
that
office.
insight when he's like, well, 15 years ago I read this cool fairy story, and
Yeah.
it's like that's
Yeah.
just been sitting in your head, waiting
Right.
to come out,
doing there. It's
Yeah.
just sitting there.
ripening.
Well, that reminds me, we're at the.
Oh, right, that Hungarian folktale I read 10 years ago. That's what I'll do
Where's-
here.
Can
Yeah.
you give me Strange Places? I'm sorry, Amy. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Somebody wants to know what you were doing in the cemetery at 3 a.m., Matt.
What are you not doing in a cemetery at 3 a.m.?
That is one of those weird sentences where you're like, it sort of tastes like blah blah blah, and you're like,
at 3 a.m.
Wait,
I know
what?
what I was doing in the cemetery at 3 a.m.
I'm just
I don't
saying,
know what
like,
you were doing
if
in
you
a cemetery
imagine a
at 3 a.m.
cemetery or a graveyard at 3 a.m. and the fog is there, and
That's
it's
Woodlawn Cemetery
very-
on 14th Street in Santa
very,
Monica. You can Google map it.
Yeah, I mean, you have.
macabre.
I assume you've been in
favorite.
a cemetery in the middle of the night.
That's
I
my
just
favorite
assume it.
cemetery. Is the one right next to Santa Monica City College on 14th
Yeah.
and Pico.
you signal boosted cemeteries, didn't you?
I did. We didn't
He
get to
did.
go to my favorite. I didn't signal boost it. Actually, it was.
Oh, who did that?
It was America.
Oh yeah.
And we both were discussing what cemetery to shoot in. It was the most convenient, not my favorite. My favorite is the one with the giant Freemason logo made out of tombstones in Santa Monica. You can see it from space with Google Maps. A giant Freemason logo made of tombstones.
Gotta
in
love the
Santa Monica.
Freemasons.
Good time.
Really?
Weird side note, I've been
Hi,
listening
Freemasons.
to
I have some
War and
great
Peace
stories
for
about
some
that,
reason,
but
and there's a
that's for
whole
another show.
thing about Freemasons in it, and it was just like, this is a very strange, like, I was not expecting this 1860s Russian novel.
Yeah. Hey.
You took a weird left turn.
I'm
Right.
always waiting for the Oddfellows to get up to something really exciting. Like the Oddfellows don't get nearly enough love in any of these books.
Who are the Oddfellows?
The Oddfellows were another secret society that was kind of made as a sort of a joke on secret societies.
Okay.
And God, they had like a whole series. I might be getting some of this cross, and I apologize. But they were I think they're the ones in the fezzes and the tiny cars.
Shriners?
Shriners?
They were Shriners,
Shriners?
but they were Oddfellows were like another break off of the Shriners. They were
Okay.
like, I gotta look it up, but like they were started the like we're gonna do weird stuff and everyone's gonna be cool.
Everyone's
So
gonna
you
be
just like it
cool.
because they're essentially a Dada secret society?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God.
You can't be a secret
just nailed
society
it.
if you don't have a city under an airport, though. I mean, that's the ground. That's the bare minimum needed.
Yeah.
I don't know how they deal with that. I live a block from an airport. It's really distracting.
Oh, and Matt Colville's in the chat.
Hey, Matt.
What?
Hey, Matt.
Wow, we just have a great
Guys,
episode tonight.
Wow, now I'm just talking about the odd. Please, someone double.
Now, Colville, come talk to us about comics.
It's not
Right,
secret yet,
writer
no,
of the
Oddfellows
Critical
is
Role
weird.
comic book.
Google them. I'm
Whoa,
sure I
whoa,
have
whoa,
a ton of stuff
what? The one that just came out today?
The one that just came out today.
That
Killing
very
it.
same one?
I think it's the same one. I think so. I think
There's
that's
a couple
Matt
of
Wright.
Are there-
Critical Role comics and
Are there?
I think ones. Yeah, there's like.
I thought there was
Oh,
only
there's
one.
like. I'm full of shit. I don't.
I did.
Yeah.
I'm. Okay, I'm gonna briefly derail us.
bring us.
All right.
But it must be an interesting experience, and I don't want to put you on the spot because he is in chat right now.
Okay.
But how weird is it to have somebody else speaking words that come from someone you made up? It felt like he really nailed
It's
it.
really weird because he really nailed it.
He did
like,
nail it.
Like it's really weird.
I was just having Matt and I were with Matt yesterday trying to compliment him, and he just bats him away.
He can't get away now.
No,
He's
you're
a
stuck.
phenomenal writer, and he's amazing with dialogue. And he also has seen a fair amount of the show, and has been playing Dungeons and Dragons his entire life. And I had no worries. I had no worries because I just know he's a good writer, and he knows our voices and knows
Even
what
like
we're like.
Sam's weird meta text dialogue for Scanlan is just oh god, it's amazing. Just the right amount of like weird meta level text for Scanlan in the book.
And it is weird to have somebody write like characters we've been improvising for 400 hours, but
430.
430 hours. And that doesn't include the home game, but
Oh man, why'd you have to say that?
but you would want somebody who knows if you're not doing it yourself, and I can't write dialogue like that. You want somebody who knows you, and
Can
it's
I
just our friend.
Can I tell you something that's going to creep you out?
Yeah.
Matt Colville was watching you guys play your home game from the bushes before you ever did Critical Role. He just is giant fans of you guys.
Didn't even know him at that point.
I know,
I thought that
but
was-
he was
I thought
giant
that
fans
was
of your
Lauren
voiceover.
Travis's
He was
dog.
watching from the
He
windows.
lied to me when I met him at that first directing job with him.
He just covered. He was just like, oh,
We just
what
assumed
now?
it was Lauren Travis's dog. Just like had those monkeys in the back. Like,
You lying liar.
getting
Wow,
into it.
he's a master of disguise
It's a tiny dog.
and
too.
hypnotism that
I
Lauren
would
Travis
watch the
thought he was
comedy
their dog.
movie about him with 7 different disguises on, being outside your various games. But
I believe
like,
that's
as
called
a
Master
dog,
of Disguise.
Right, but
gonna
his
Pink Panther.
lustrous hair and beard just pokes out of every single
Every single one is
disguise.
just like coming out of
So,
below
Yeah, there's a Mrs. Doubtfire woman on the street corner, except the beard is coming out and the hair is coming out from under the white wig.
Matt
Sorry,
Colville.
Matt. Sorry.
Well, Matt
sorry,
Colville,
Matt.
thank you for joining us and
Yeah.
come be on our show. So I wanted another one that he wrote called Heads.
Heads.
We were talking about Mike Mignola and how like he like seems to know all this stuff. He's a madman with all this knowledge.
This is a great one to talk about because it doesn't spoil anything.
It doesn't spoil
for the
anything. It's a
overall.
one-off. But this is one of my favorite intros that he does. Heads. This is one of my favorite Hellboy stories. It was also one of the most difficult because I know nothing about Japan, but wanted the thing to have a very Japanese feel. It is a very close adaptation of a Japanese folktale, but I left out the part where the flying heads were eating bugs. Heads originally appeared as a backup feature in the Abe Sapien one-shot published in March 1998. And it is...
Japanese fables, man.
I know, but this is only like a 7-page story where Hellboy is in Japan.
Yeah, he wanders into a home and there's a bunch of really creepy people sitting and having a meal together, and they're saying kind of weird things to him.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah, so-
stay the night, stay the night.
Funny joke, funny joke.
So this guy's like
Japanese,
very
actually.
safe, very, very safe. It's very, very, very safe.
Nothing more comforting than someone who keeps
Yeah,
you
it's
tight.
very safe. You're gonna love it. It's very,
So
very
safe.
safe. Very
Extremely
safe.
not haunted.
It's like an alien wearing a human disguise going, hello, fellow humans.
Yeah.
I am a human too.
Do you like skin?
I love
About my
skin.
tax deduction. Ah.
Where can I get a hamburger? So he says, this Japanese man walks Hellboy into the parlor where everyone else is sitting. He says, Mr. Liu tells very funny stories. Maybe you know this one. A farmer met a ghost woman, and she gave him a golden box, but said, you must never open this. He took it home and hid it from his wife, but one day she found it and looked inside. It was full of gouged out human eyes, and at that moment, the farmer dropped dead in his field. The wife went mad and lived the rest of her days like an animal. The end. And then everyone else laughs. And Hellboy goes, wow, that is a funny story. You know, I just realized I'm awfully tired. I'm gonna go. And then the man walks him to his room and goes, here's a special room for you. Good and safe, very comfortable. Very safe, very safe. And then at the end of that page, you see Hellboy reach into his waistcoat and pull out a pistol, and he goes, yeah, I bet it is. He knows what's up.
Because he knows what he's getting into.
Yeah.
I felt like that scene was maybe just a meta joke also on the wonderful stories you find in Japanese folklore, many of which are just horrifying.
Well, and a lot of them
where it's like,
boil
and
down.
then they ate their
A
skin.
lot of Japanese folklore boils down to don't get robbed while traveling between towns. Really don't get robbed while traveling between towns. If you see a house and it looks like it's like a little off the wayside, probably best not to go there. They may eat you. They're really big into there's actually several stories which were just based off of common traps from highwaymen and how they would entice people into doing something stupid so they could rob them.
And for the record, this weird self-deprecating streak that Mignola seems to have, the story looks as if he did, as much as he's like, don't know anything about Japan, it looks as if he poured a great deal of time into attempting to really do justice to this material that he's chosen to showcase. It doesn't look like, I put a sign on it that says you're in Japan now.
Right. I'll assume what that means was he thought, I know nothing about Japan. Let me spend the next 2 weeks reading all about Japan
Only
so I
read
can
3
write a
books.
7-page
So I can draw this
comic.
house.
Yeah.
I got an honorary PhD in Japanese studies, so I could do a 7-page backstory in Abe Sapien that will end up in a volume of my book.
I can
Yeah.
say that one of this is like the weird piece of trivia in my head, is one of the first Western books written on Japanese folklore and occultism was written by a man named Percival Lowell, who, if that name sounds familiar to you, was also designed a telescope and was one of the people who was convinced that there were canals on Mars because his telescope was faulty. And the optical effect that made it look like there were civilizations on Mars is actually called the Lowell effect now. But he's the reason why Martians became like a big thing, because he coined the thought of there are people up there. Look at all this stuff.
For the
Poor
lols.
guy.
Oh, poor
Percival
guy.
Lowell also, wrote a very, very interesting take on the occultism of Japan. It was a very unique, very Western perspective on the strange things across the ocean.
So
it's a bit colonial, but it's nice. It's a bit colonial.
I want to do one more of these
bring it.
introductions.
Ooh.
It's from a gentleman named Gary Gianni. I'm not familiar with him. Are you familiar with him?
He's well known for monster stories, particularly.
Yeah. Okay. So he did a comic book adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and contacted Mignola saying, "Would you do an introduction for me?" And Mignola was on the phone with him, and this entire introduction is him recalling this phone call because Mignola essentially said no. But he didn't say no. He said, and this is Gianni recalling the conversation, putting in quotes. This is Mignola speaking. "You want me to write an introduction?" He paused for a moment, considering the possibilities, and proceeded to launch into an imagined scenario which Charles Dickens, who thrilled audiences with his storytelling skills at public readings, would have greatly appreciated. "Yeah, I can just picture it," Mignola mused. "The long-deceased Jules Verne smashing his way out of a tomb somewhere in France after he hears I'm writing an introduction for his 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He'll look like he's grinning, but he's not, because he doesn't have any lips. He'll just be mad." I could easily see the black and white shapes Mignola would use in rendering an illustration for his whimsical nightmare. The artist continued, Vern is yelling, that bastard Mignola, I'll find him and tear his heart out. Vern will try to say this, but by now his jaw unhinges and falls down around his collarbones. He shambles halfway round the world and winds up at my front door. Boom, boom, boom. Come on down here, Mignola. Open up, you hear me? Come on down here and I'll beat the crap out of you. That was how he said no to writing that.
If you knew what your hair was doing, also, is you got this wonderful fly as you yelled. It went.
Oh, really?
It stood
Yeah,
completely up. It was amazing.
My hair is very strange.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It made
You're
me very
good.
happy.
You're good.
Yeah,
Go.
is it good?
Yeah, you're
Yes, perfect. Not like it was 30 seconds ago.
My,
spectacular.
my sweet wife Brittany has to put up with my hair all the time. We'll be out somewhere and I'll just like run my hair and she's like, "Oh baby, your hair. Don't ever touch your hair." I'm like, "What does it do?" And it's just like it'll be like doing.
Do you need some Dapper Dan? I can get you some Dapper Dan.
No, it's a problem even when I have a product in it. It just like goes everywhere.
You tried Dapper Dan?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if Dapper Dan is even real, but I'm very excited.
I actually found
Must
a hair gel in Japan that I use a lot,
Oh, wow.
and we have it imported from
Very
Japan.
safe. Very safe.
Very safe.
Very
Very
Extremely
safe.
safe.
Very safe.
Stop touching it.
And wow, I did not even know
We
you
have
were
a
in the
Britney
studio.
sighting.
Brittany snuck in. Hi, wife.
Oh dear. People are asking. There's apparently a.
Yes, so we
there's a. Have we ever, any of us played Hellboy: The Science of Evil?
What? Played,
No.
played.
No.
No, there's a couple of video games. I don't know anything about them though.
I will say, I mean, like, and I told this to you guys before that Hellboy is showing up in Injustice 2, which is
That,
Which I do. What?
like that, more than anything makes me want to go get Injustice 2.
You don't have Injustice 2?
No, I do.
Did you
when do
just
I
say
have-
that more than anything
Yeah.
makes me want to go?
Yeah.
Because you can't think of any other reason that
No.
you might want to.
No.
None.
None.
None. It's okay.
All right.
I've learned to
None.
live with it.
It's fine.
I've gotten used to
I
it.
don't have. I legit do not have time for video games. I just don't. Like, I would love to be able to play it, and I would love to be able to play Barry Allen, but I can't. Wait, he's Barry Allen?
No, I'm Barry Allen,
No.
but he's in the game too.
Oh, who are you in the game?
I'm Reverse Flash.
Wait, are you really?
Yes.
I had no idea. Aw. I love you even
There's
more.
no
He beats
reasons.
the
No
crud out of
There's
reasons.
a
me in, like,
great
season-
cinematic of the two going at each other.
Oh, yeah, I love
It's
it. I
amazing.
love it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I'll
cool.
send you this
Magical.
video.
That's cool.
The little,
Yeah.
little windmill.
Is this like too personal a question to ask? Like, if you were voicing someone from Hellboy, who would you want to be?
The
Oh.
chat has already asked this. So.
Oh,
I'm rude like the chat.
Abe.
Aw.
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah,
a
you'd
great
be a
one.
great Abe.
Yeah. I always
Very
loved
great
Abe.
I love the just in the second story where you're seeing Liz, like just the couple of panels of Abe, like he's not even talking. It's
Oh, at the
just in his
window, he puts his
face
hand
and
up.
how he's watching. Like, woof.
And again, like you talking about that, but like it's just simple line work. He just knows exactly how to draw the curve of the smile or the way that the eye is looking
yeah,
at. Like it's just
their
like
expression is really deep.
yeah, but it's just simple eyes
Cinematic
and squiggles, and he knows how to do it like just perfectly. And it's amazing. I would want to be Roger the homunculus.
Homunculus.
He's like
Yeah.
he's my I think he's my favorite character. I just feel so bad for him, but like he's just such a he is so naughty. He's the one person in all of this who has zero humanity to him.
Does he?
Yeah, he's essentially like a Frankenstein monster.
Yeah.
Like-
and he's decided to be an agent for good and trying to keep the world safe from
Yeah.
other oddities like himself.
Second week we're talking about Frankenstein monsters keeping the world safe.
Yeah.
I'm pointing that out.
Yeah. Well, it's October. It's perfect.
October.
But yeah, like because Hellboy is the son of a witch
Spoilers.
and
Yeah.
a demon.
Yeah.
A
A witch from the 1600s.
A witch from the 1600s. That's a sad story when you get that story. I
Yeah.
believe that's in Chain
Coffin.
Yeah.
Coffin. So he has some humanity to him. I don't want to spoil too much, but there is a bit of humanity in Abe Sapien. Liz is obviously
Right.
human.
She's just an X-Man.
Yeah,
Essentially.
essentially. But Roger, not like
Yeah.
he's mud. He's mud and electricity essentially.
Yeah.
Brought to life, you know, and he's the one trying. Like he's trying so hard to do the
Yeah,
right thing
and-
all the time, and he's the one that everyone is the most terrified of.
95% of us would just say, fuck all of y'all and go live in a cave or off yourself or something. You're like, what am I? What do I do with myself? And he just shows up for duty.
Yeah, yeah. Like, and I think my favorite story of his is the Conqueror Worm, where Hellboy and Roger have to go stop this occult rite in a castle far, far away. I don't want to spoil any. Like, we've already talked so much about like Wake the Devil and the first Seed of Destruction, but yeah, I don't want to spoil anything about Conqueror Worm because it is so good. Like Conqueror Worm and Right Hand of Doom are like I think Right Hand of Doom is volume 4.
I lose track of what the numbering
of the ones
them.
that I've read. Right Hand of Doom and Conqueror Worm are my favorites.
This is 8. That's
Oh,
4. Is Right Hand of Doom.
Yeah, so those are my favorites.
I think Wake the Devil
Yeah,
for me.
well, that's because it has the werewolf story.
No, Wake the Devil is Vampire.
Oh, that's right.
It's the follow-up to Seed of Destruction. And that's when, like, Seed of Destruction is like, okay, Nazis, Cthulhu-esque stuff, and this guy's a demon, and then it just broadens it out even further and that's when he starts reaching out to multiple strains of mythology, and you start going like, holy cow, this is just how deep, how wide, not deep, how wide is his net going to be for
It's
this?
a weird, like, grand unified field theory, but for mythology.
Yeah, it really is. That's a good
right.
way to put it.
That's
Where does Baltimore fit into all of this for
I
the uninitiated?
don't know.
Baltimore has nothing to do. It's a totally separate universe.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's, yeah, nothing to do with Hellboy. It's a whole new. It's this guy who. I mean, it's like 1880s, I think, and it's this guy who. How much to say? He's on a revenge quest to off a vampire who took somebody from him, and then it just gets, again, deeper and more involved than that. But it's beautifully, the art is gorgeous, and even more like it's evolved over time. And if you look at Seed of Destruction, which is still beautiful, Seed of Destruction is very different than Hellboy in Hell, which is the most recent. And then Baltimore's even after that, and it's just I want to see.
I know we have so many
again.
books here.
If you happen to run across it and have a lot of shelf space and loose change to throw at it, IDW publishes things called artist editions, which are beautiful reproductions of comic book art, photocopied at their original size, which is usually like 2 up, meaning like double size of a page, or in some cases the 50 stuff is even bigger. But they photocopy from original art, and they make these beautiful giant hardcovers that you can read, and they try whenever possible to have complete stories. And they've done some Mignola. They did one for Amazing Screw-On Head.
I love Screw On Head.
and then-
I don't remember anything about Screw On Head, but I remember reading it and thinking, this is the greatest thing ever.
And they've done one now for Hellboy in Hell, where they've been reproducing from the original Mignola pages.
Wow.
So you can buy these
Wow.
beautiful hardcovers and look.
I got to jump in and correct myself.
Okay.
Baltimore, not Mignola. It's Ben Stenbeck, but it's also gorgeous. Gorgeous artwork, yeah.
Yeah. And it seems
He
to take
writes
some
with
nods.
Christopher
Like
Golden.
It
least in the
definitely
color,
does, but
you
it's
know,
a different
Is it still Dave Stewart, or is it somebody else?
colors
Colors by Dave Stewart.
I was going to say, like, how do you even handle the color palettes in these books? It is just, I mean, just how is this even possible?
Thanks, Chief.
Oh, man,
Good work, Chief.
Look at that. They use so few colors, but to such great effect, and it just each page is just these intense splashes that move through the like. There's some tans, there's a little bit of green, and there's so much red on this page, and it is just spectacular.
I'm really worried about having been on this show. I feel like I'm going to go buy a lot lot
That's what we do.
prints.
Actually,
Not a problem.
Yeah, I got
could
you.
be so kind.
There's
got
a
you,
statue
sweetheart.
out there.
just
Oh
wanna-
man.
Like,
We have,
look at how the colors on these 2 pages move. Where we start with these browns and we get these light yellow tans, and then we move into this blue green, and then it just goes into this deep red. And this they're just not using a lot, but it's such an effect.
Well, and look at the
Well, look,
creativity of his panel
The room,
layouts
the room
there
in
as
the
well.
castle, in the window is red, and then once we enter the room, that's where the reds take over. I mean, that's just brilliant. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
instead of every panel being a mix of the same 4 or 5 colors,
No.
he's making like
There's like-
zones of emotion with it.
and it helps guide you through the narrative. Like it actually is like taking you into that castle.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Like the rhythm on this page, which is from one of the vampire stories, I believe, is fantastic to me because you start with, is this the right area to be? Just picking a random page here. You've got this sort of neutrality. He's coming out of the growing creepiness of this page, and you've got like literally a sound effect that is coming out of the voices of all of these monsters going, stay. And he's fighting them. And then you have this moment of thoughtfulness, but it's thoughtfulness coming from this very creepy lady who has reasons for reminding you of blood. And it says, wait, wait, do you hear? And then suddenly it's blue. It's this weird open access to the sky. And you're back with the monsters. And little Hellboy's just down here being like, what's going on? And you hear the Varkolak. I don't know how to say it. Varkolak? And the biggest thing here is the face of this one particular ghoul, while Hellboy is sort of surrounded by all of these conflicting emotions. And then it continues from there. Yeah, comics.
Okay.
Comics are great, guys.
Comics. I'm trying to find a good example, but one of my favorite things that Mignola does with his work is you'll enter like a temple, and then just like a random panel will just be like a close-up of the wall. Like, and it has nothing to do with the actual like plotting of the story. It has everything to do with setting the tone.
Yeah.
Of the space that you've just come into, and
it makes you feel 1,000 years of history in one panel.
yeah, well, and then like you've got like stuff like this where it's just like you've got all this incredibly simple line work, but then you have this like it's almost like this strange like photorealistic tracing.
It reminds me of what Kirby would do when things would get psychotropic in one of the Kirby books.
Yeah,
He'd
so
start doing collage work or taking photographs.
Yeah, so you've got this incredibly intricate work over here, but then the actual characters are very simply laid out, you know? And it's one of the most impressive things to me is how he does that.
You have such a pile here.
Yeah, we've got such a pile.
I know.
And we're just like,
Oh, man. Now I'm just distracted.
yeah, all right, so I do want to talk
hard.
about BPRD a little bit. BPRD,
What is BPRD?
Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense.
When does it take place?
Always.
this is all modern day, I believe. Like a lot of the Hellboy stuff,
They're
like he'll
now running a bunch of
hops all
series
over
that
it.
are Hellboy in the BPRD, 1952, 1953, 1954.
But like these, I all believe like
BPRD greatest hits.
this is all supposed to be contemporary. I believe like the most
Or what
it
passes
jumps around.
for it.
What
I was
passes
gonna
for
say what
contemporary.
passes for it in
and that's one of the other things is that these jump around a lot. Like you'll get a comic that's like, oh, this is a 1966, and this is a 1954, and this is 1982. You know, but a lot of the BPRD stuff, at least the stuff that I've read, has been contemporary. But the BPRD mostly follows, and I believe, I know I've got an insert of the characters that are typically included in these. But it's Liz Sherman, Roger the Homunculus, Abe Sapien, Kate, what's her name?
Corrigan.
Kate Corrigan. And it's them going on adventures while Hellboy has disappeared. Like at the end of one of the comics, Hellboy just decides, you know, I'm kind of done with BPRD. I'm going to go do my own thing. So at one point, if you read the entire story, at one point, Hellboy does kind of like, he just kind of fucks off. Like, I'm gone, bye. Like, you guys are, I'm done.
For good reason.
I'm good, for good reason. But the BPRD has to continue to go on, so that's where these stories kind of pick up. And they are essentially Hellboy stories, just without Hellboy. And they carry the torch very well. Abe Sapien sort of takes on leading the team. Roger the Homunculus sort of takes Abe Sapien's role as the sort of outcast, even though Abe Sapien's still very much an outcast. Like Roger is very much the Frankenstein's monster looking for a place to belong, where that's more or less been Abe Sapien's role in all the Hellboy stories. Yeah, and they're great. I kind of don't know, like, I don't want to spoil anything about these because I love them, but like they've got Killer in My Skull, which is a Lobster Johnson story, and then they've got Abe Sapien versus Science, where they tell how Abe Sapien helped out Roger when he was first brought to the BPRD. It's just
I love
great.
the
It's
fact
just
that
great.
the collections for BPRD have such fascinating names as Plague of Frogs,
Yeah.
War
Plague of Frogs. That's where I believe you get Abe Sapien's background.
Nice.
Volume 3. Thank you for the title.
No,
Yeah, thank
excellent. And eventually a whole lot of books called Hell on Earth, which sounds pleasant.
you. Right? I don't know those actually.
Is
BPRD gets into a whole storyline called Hell on Earth. There's like 9 volumes of it. This has been part of the reason it's taken me so long to jump in, is that I was like, where will I
there's so
start?
much
and like,
goodness.
now that I've finally peeled that Band-Aid off, like, y'all will never see me again.
I mean, thank God for Comixology Unlimited having like the first, I think, 4 volumes of Hellboy.
Quite a few of them are up on. We actually had a chief put a graphic.
Yeah,
up.
Chief put a note up
last time
there
I looked,
earlier,
it was 1, 2, 3, and like 8 and 9.
1, 2,
but-
3, 4, 5,
And
8,
then
9.
like
Yeah, it was weird.
8, 9, something like that. Yeah, and I know like the first 2 or 3 volumes of BPRD are free.
Also,
on there.
your local library.
Oh,
If they don't have Hellboy, they should. They probably do, though.
Probably do.
but I did want to say one of my favorite Hellboy stories doesn't have anything to do with Hellboy, but just the universe. I was mentioning this to you guys before the show. Is called Night Train.
Ooh.
Yes.
It's
yes.
by Jeff Johns.
Ooh.
And it's a very simple story where
Who you may know from as a DC writer and one of the head honchos over there now.
And
Yeah.
is this in BPRD comics?
this is in the BPRD. This is in volume 2 called Soul of Venice.
Okay.
It's a short story. It's only like a 7-page, 8-page story, and I have it on my here. I don't have it here, but it's essentially like BPRD gets reports of a night train that just it hasn't been around, but this ghost train is just running through town, and then you get a flashback to what that train is, and it's like happens within a page. So I'm not going to spoil anything. Lobster Johnson was attempting to stop a Nazi saboteur on a night train going through somewhere in Middle America. And the night train was carrying a bunch of soldiers and scientists for the Manhattan Project, and he failed. Lobster Johnson failed. And while Lobster Johnson survived the explosion and the crash, no one else did. And now the night train wants revenge on the ghost train wants revenge on the saboteur who's still alive. The Nazi saboteur who's still alive and not hiding, and this ghost train is now looking for this Nazi
So
saboteur.
the saboteur is being haunted by
By
a
a
train.
train.
That's pretty great.
And when I first got into it, I was like, "Oh, this is a fun, silly story."
are so
By
many
the end
funny
of
ways
it,
you could play with that.
it's strangely chilling. Like the way that the art is drawn. I think I pulled a couple pictures. I don't know if Chief has shown them because I've been distracted staring at you guys, but it's strangely chilling and kind of like scary. And I remember Brittany and I were like just at home watching television while I was reading, and I paused whatever. I was like, I just read one of my favorite Hellboy stories, and it has nothing to do with Hellboy. She's like, "That's great, sweetheart." And I was like, No, it's so good. She's like, "Baby, I'm not reading it. Just let me read it later." But I was so excited to tell her about it because it stopped me in my tracks with how good it was, and that's in the second volume.
Ghost trains.
Nice.
In its tracks. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It was too easy to grab, and I didn't even hear it.
I have a weird love of ghost trains anyway, so I'm excited by this.
Why do you have a weird love of ghost trains?
Well, I mean, it's not weird. I like trains, and I like the idea that there are. It was also the very first episode of Amazing Stories. Was a ghost train
Was it?
episode.
I think they're bringing that back, by the way.
They might be bringing that back.
Yeah,
But
I don't-
And then I also used to very early delving into the web. I'm going to see if I can find this for Friday. Was a website that was filled with like weird flash animation interactive haunted stories. One of them was a haunted train. There's something about train tracks are really weirdly lonely and kind of dark because there's like this notion that something's supposed to be there, but nothing ever is. At least in Los Angeles.
Well, and especially like now, like if you go to like old tracks, like in the Midwest, like
So
just
the
in
tracks
the
are
desert.
a promise that isn't kept.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like being on a street with no cars. It's just a street that forever has nothing on it. And like especially living on the west side, I used to live a couple blocks from train tracks, and they were always there was something very haunted about the whole thing.
Yeah.
There's a distinct absence.
And I grew up in Texas, which had train tracks all over the place, and like I would like my dad actually really loved trains, and we would go out to train tracks a lot when I was a kid, and just
I also feel like you look at
know,
them and you
hang
feel
out.
connected to earlier era.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's something like classic about it, like it's very much of a bygone era.
yeah. So do you feel the same about ghost ships that you do about ghost trains?
No.
Because I'm the same.
I don't feel the same about ghost
I don't feel the
ships.
same.
I'm even recalling a nightmare as a kid where I thought I heard a train go by my window even though I lived in the hills, and I was like really freaked out by that. God, that's like
What,
why are ghost ships not as maybe and like it's not
But
like
you
they
know
didn't have
what?
access to
I
water.
think it's because what you just said. The trains are like a bygone era. Ships are still used a lot. Trains are still used, but not the way that they used to.
For traveling an hour from the suburbs
Yeah,
to
and you don't
Yeah.
look at the ocean and go like, where are all the ships? Whereas if you see a train track, you're like,
Where's the
nothing,
train?
There's nothing here.
And it's likely that there's not going to be anything there for a while, if ever.
If ever, especially on the west side.
Especially now that we have flying cars.
Do we have flying cars?
No, that's going to be cool though.
Were you just hoping you could summon that reality?
Ghost
like-
cars. There's,
Yeah.
I'm
I just want to
into
say Jeff
Yes.
M0307
I'm using the
was
secret.
like ghost cars.
Ghost cars.
You've sold me.
I'm into ghost
I'm
cars.
traveling for the holidays at Christmas this
Yeah.
year in Europe, and I want to pack as light as possible. I think I'm just going to load all of BPRD.
On
Are you?
Comixology, yeah.
Comics?
I was
Sure.
about to say I'm doing Christmas in Europe too.
Are you?
Aw.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's
I'm doing
good.
Christmas in California.
As I shouldn't have said online. Yeah, but there we go.
Yeah, I held that
It's a big
last little
city.
detail back.
Yeah, well, I'll tweet out one at the very least.
Yeah, let's see. There's
Yeah, do we have some good questions? Because we need to start
Yeah.
wrapping it up. We're 15 minutes out.
I know we're God. There's the people asking us about the Matt Wagner Mage series. Yes, that's a whole episode all on its own. God, there's so many of them. Do you think there's a place in Hellboy for New Age folk tales like the Mothman? Well, actually, I mean, like, do they ever? Do they? They don't. I don't know if they go into like. I think of New Age folk tales as more of the urban legend or suburban legend or rural
It
legend.
doesn't feel like that would be something that Mignola would gravitate towards. It seems like Mignola is very much.
It's too youthful, and it's
Maybe it's too youthful, but it feels like Mignola is very much like 40s or early or later. Like 40s seems as much as far as he'll get.
And there's a large sense through many of the stories that all those old things are fading out or dying out.
I love that. Speaking of the melancholy that they frequently recur to, I love in one of the stories that we talked about. I won't say which one. Towards the end, you've spent some kind of time with like this antagonist, and then they sort of comment like, well, I guess that's how it goes. Essentially, as we fade from the
Yeah.
earth, and it's just this beautiful little like, oh.
There's a bit of a death
No,
rattle.
Hellboy did the right thing, but
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, there's very much a throwback to like a bygone era with Mignola. You know, like one of the intros that I read, I can't remember which one, says that like he's fascinated with the Victorian area of London and just the world in general and like that entire aesthetic but that aesthetic over the entire earth. It's not just like Victorian London.
Yeah.
It's Victorian Japan, Victorian Africa, like, but still somehow updated to like
Yeah, he
now.
clearly is in love with 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, but then it also goes back thousands of years, and there's a lot of Hellboy destroying things that are bent on destroying the world. So he's obviously got to keep going, but they're mythological beings that have been around for 10,000 years, and even though they're going to kill us all, and he's got to destroy it, you think, oh well.
Yeah, something's
sad.
passing out
Right.
of the world with that.
Do we have any other good questions or?
There's a lot
Or
of
some
people
fun
asking
comments?
about like things like the weird numbering of the books and like where's the best place to start and what's a good flow through.
We'll recur back to that one because the start
the
at least
best
we can-
place to start.
Well, you have to
is
start.
you have to start Seed of
Seed of Destruction
Yeah.
and then Wake the Devil.
Yeah, you have to read those two if you really want to get anywhere with it. I would actually venture to say that if you wanted to skip the Chain Coffin, you could.
Don't skip it.
Don't
I
skip
would
it.
not want to, but if you're on a budget and you can't do Comixology Unlimited, you can only do like 3 or 4. I would say Seed of Destruction, Wake the Devil, Right Hand of Doom, Conqueror Worm.
Yeah, that's right. But if you can fit in Chain Coffin as well, do so.
Yeah, but those are like the essential 4 for getting the basics of Hellboy.
How far along in Hellboy were they when he started doing the BPRD stories?
I believe Conqueror Worm is where that started to break
Okay.
off, and that's volume 6.
Wow.
I know there's at least one website where somebody's just devoted themselves to doing like a giant Hellboy reading order. So if you want to
That
get really
is
messy
awesome.
with it, I think somebody's got your back on that one.
This
That
is
is
weird because
cool.
like I delve into Avengers and this is like mildly intimidating, which is definitely has been part of the reason why I'm like there'll come a week I have to do. all
Well,
of
but
it.
again, there's
why I
something
don't do
interesting
Avengers.
about like,
sure you understand, yeah.
you know, like with Chain Coffin and Right Hand of Doom, these are collections
They're
more or
short
less
stories,
of
yeah.
short stories that have appeared in like all these extant other places, and he'll reference this stuff, like he'll put like
Be like, I added 2
Stuff in
pages.
these short stories get brought up later in the main storylines.
exactly, and that's the thing.
So I don't think they're skippable.
That's the thing but that's the thing that I think is intimidating, is that one little bitty panel.
It's a rich
that you,
world.
that you just glanced over he brings back 3 volumes later. You know, like you were saying with the child, like I don't even know if I know that. Like I don't think I've gotten that far, and I've read a lot of this stuff. But like that's awesome. Like.
But that's what the other great thing is. So many of these are just like they're wonderful adventure yarns. You could theoretically just jump in and read them. Like you definitely should, if you have a chance, like start at the beginning and let it all unfold. But like that's one of the beauty things about working in sort of short and self-contained stories is that somebody who randomly was just reading Dark Horse Presents probably got a really nice introduction to Hellboy and was like, what is this? I'll go track down more of it.
But it's all decades old. There's zero reason not to go to
already-
Seed of
somebody
Destruction
already just
and
linked
see if
the
you like
reading
Seed
order
of
for
Destruction.
Hellboy.
Oh, really?
Chat. Bless you. Who did that?
Thanks, chat.
I mean, that's it, really. Go to Seed of Destruction. It's 4 comic books. You will know right away if you're in love with it. You will be. And then you'll map out your road.
Yeah. Should we do our
probably do our-
5-minute
Do we have a
topic?
winner
Do
for
we
the
have a
5-minute
winner?
topic?
We do have a winner for the 5-minute
All right.
topic.
Oh,
So.
oh, 5-minute topic?
How this normally works, just so you know what you're in for, is we're given 5 minutes. We usually take 1 minute each, but it tends to be messy.
One free for all.
Yeah, one for free for all. Although I don't know if this topic is going to take a minute.
Okay.
It's going to be a little random.
Okay.
So I'm going to do our little cut here. Every week on the Wednesday Club, we take a topic that is suggested by you, the audience, and we talk about it for 5 minutes and see what we can pull out of our behinds in 5 minutes to talk about something fun. And this week's topic, prepare the counter,
Who does it come from?
comes from Miss Sunflower 94.
Oh, thank you,
Yay,
Miss
Sunflower!
And it's Hellboy pulls from history and folklore. But what piece of folklore/history would you love to see incorporated in a Hellboy short? Ooh. And I'll start this one off. My favorite piece I can't talk about because I'm going to be using it for something else, but something else that I thought about that would be really fun. I really love the Orishas of South America, and I don't think that they get enough love of some of the amazing South American folklore and so gods of the South American gods.
What is an Orisha?
They are. It's sort of. Not to simplify it too much, but it's kind of a. It's the South American version of sort of the it's like a Greek. It's a pantheon of gods in sort of the Greek sense, except somehow South America made them even more fun and mean and sexy and cool to be around. And there's been a couple attempts to do really fun stuff with like fictional tellings of them walking the earth, but like not a lot of them make them much further than like there's a group that did some fun stuff in like Cuba with them, but like they're great characters. You should look them up. They come up every now and then. So that's my little. You should Google Orishas and go into that.
How do you spell Orishas?
Orisha. Orisha. Oh God, I think Orish.
It's probably close enough for
It'll
Google
come
to
up
take
real
us
quick.
the rest of the way.
It'll come up real quick. Yeah. So that's my little throw. Touche.
Let's see, because there's so much of the Hellboy stuff that I don't know yet, I can't rule out a lot of the things that I might think of appearing there. But since you've said sort of that it doesn't tend to get into kind of like super up-to-date modern, like what did they call it, new age things. I don't know that much of the modern folklore, but I'd love to see like a haunted internet story. I'd love to see what they would do with certain
Sure,
like
that's a good idea.
Hellboy and the Ghost of Tumblr. Like I'd love to see because certainly all the same human impulses exist, all the same human weaknesses exist, all the same human temptations exist, in some cases magnified and given more power. And this is probably just the Buffy kid in me, being like, yeah, internet demons, that'll be great. But I think I would really like to see Hellboy struggle with some of that.
I know what I'd like to see. So, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, hell is a real place, be it another dimension or metaphysical. He goes there, right? You know that there's a book called Hellboy in Hell, and he's from there. We also see lots of instances of the importance of Judeo-Christian history, and we see priests and nuns, and they're often don't make it, but they do have an effect on the things they see. But we've never really seen heaven or Mignola's version of view of what heaven is. So I don't remember. I don't think I would be forgetting, but I don't feel like like Gabriel or Michael or what his spin on that would be.
Like a weird little seraphim showing up.
Yeah, yeah.
Lots of demons,
Interesting.
not many angels.
That's right. That's right.
God, I'm like, there's so many like martyr stories that I'm like all of a sudden like remembering aspects of, but forgetting who they're assigned to. Like I know like there's Justin Martyr and stuff like that, but God, there's a martyr who was like in a Roman Colosseum, and like he was thrown into the lions, and the lions didn't kill him.
Sebastian?
I can't remember, and it's driving me nuts. But I would love to see.
I want to say Sebastian, but I might be on.
Like, I would love to
He's
see
got the
Hellboy
spears on his
do.
side, right?
Yeah, I think. Oh, I mean, like to be fair, I read it later on.
Yeah, like it's driving me nuts that I can't remember. Like this is so long ago when I was in seminary, but like I'm trying to remember like all that stuff like really hard. But I would love to see like a throwback to like early, like tremendously early Christianity, like 2nd century Christianity.
You mean
Have
when
they
it
done
was
like a
that
Christmas
underground
special
thing?
with a Saint Nicholas and the Krampus?
I believe that's coming.
That's coming. That's coming. That's coming. That's right.
We did. We just ordered Hellboy and the Krampus.
Yeah.
Makes me happy.
But I would love to see like a throwback to like early Christianity where like Hellboy he's called to deal with like maybe like some heretics or something like that. Like I want to say the Athanasians, but I can't remember if I'm correct. I know that there was the Arius. Anyway, like the heretics of early Christianity are calling like for their blood to be avenged because they were like they were killed by the church proper. But the church proper
Or the
wasn't
church that would
necessarily-
eventually declare itself the church proper.
Yeah, exactly. So like you've got like the stuff of like the biblical canonization where they're like St. Thomas isn't an actual gospel, and then St. Thomas is like, what are you talking about? I wrote a great gospel. I would love to see like the saints who were murdered by the church proper, the Catholic Church, kind of rising up and wanting to maybe put themselves forward in that way.
Maybe
But
in a Christmas special with the Krampus.
Wasn't he also under the line?
Daniel was thrown to the lions, but that's Old Testament.
Okay.
That's like pre-Christ.
Okay.
That's a couple thousand years before Christ.
There's
Sometimes
certainly-
the stuff that's in your head.
There's certainly precedent too because he sees things that happened centuries ago and he's like
Yeah.
transported places, so they could do that.
Yeah, he could do that. Yeah.
And we're out.
Time at that moment, like
I
it's
can't
magical.
believe-
How every week
I'm
it
in.
happens.
I'm in for all of it.
You did
I can't
so
believe
well.
I forgot every single last name. Like that's what I think what people say on Jeopardy. They're like, I know the answer, but I'm under pressure.
That's why the 5-minute clock exists, is
Yeah.
to make idiots of us all.
Thank you for the wonderful question, Miss Sunflower. That was a fantastic 5-minute topic.
Yeah, that was
and
great.
I'm officially subscribing
That
to all of the books.
jogged my
described.
memory hardcore.
This is Hellboy, which you should be reading, and this is also the Wednesday Club, which you can see on Geek and Sundry's Twitch every Wednesday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you guys, and
Welcome to the Wednesday Club.
Jeez, thanks for having me too.
well, we
This
got
has been
like
so
5 more
much
minutes,
fun.
but
We
we just
do?
make these little things so that we can send them to use for other people. It's a trick, and like the
Chief-
chat
Chief,
knows.
get
The
me
chat's
that
like, where are they
Brittany's
going?
taking
No,
over
they
Chief's
know.
notes. Oh, look, I can point.
wow.
There we go. There we go. Amazing.
Why is the screen filling up with squirrels? What's going on?
Yay!
Why has there not been a Hellboy Squirrel Girl crossover?
I would read the heck out of
Come
that.
on, come
The
on.
hell?
Now we're all touching our hair.
They started a petition for you guys for the Doctor Strange crossover.
Yeah.
Yes! Make it happen, internet.
Well, I mean, like, it is an interesting idea of, like, it is like the smirking wizard at the top and the rough and tumble, like,
Blue collar, yeah.
paranormal investigator at the bottom.
Yeah, actually, what's funny is that Jason Aaron's run on Doctor Strange has made him a bit more of a plumber.
Yeah,
They,
I was
like,
gonna
knocked him
say,
down a few
They
notches.
definitely could meet in the middle and have pizza and beer in Brooklyn somewhere.
Sure.
Definitely.
In the bar that has no doors.
Yeah.
And he could taunt Stephen Strange about how he eats his pizza with a knife and fork.
Yeah, which he probably
Inappropriate.
does.
Oh yeah, no, he's
Sure.
he's awful.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Did you have fun coming and talking to us about Hellboy?
You just invited me to talk about one of my favorite things. Yeah, I had a great time talking about
This is
Hellboy.
our we're trying to get better at knowing what people's favorite things are, so we can do this because it's so this is a delightful pile.
Yeah. Well, and we discovered it with Hector because he got so excited about Spider-Man. We were like, we should just have our guests talk about the thing that they're the most excited about. And
Hellboy.
Boom.
Hellboy, like this
Yeah.
is great. Like
Love Hellboy.
we learned so much from you.
I
man.
needed an excuse to put it all on my list also, which I did, and now as soon as I have like some free time, I'm gonna sit
Like
and read.
the artwork is beautiful. Like that's the thing that I responded to the most outside of just like this sort of occult Judeo-Christianity throwbacks and stuff like that. Like the seminarian. in
painfully
me. Like,
beautiful.
I was reading these like a year out of seminary. Like I was like, I'm gonna go study comedy instead. Hellboy? Well, this is a fun answer to what I just left.
There's
So-
there's that fabric or the paint that they're using currently, which is the blackest black that exists. I'm sure you've seen like little YouTube videos of them playing with like the absolute negative black where everything
Yeah.
just vanishes. And I would like the minute that becomes available, I would love Hellboy print done in that black that's so black that it just ceases to exist as a
It's
concept.
void. It's like
It's just
not
void.
black.
Void
it's
paint.
just void.
You can just a Roadrunner can run through it. It's so black. Just
I'm
out.
curious if people take our advice and start Hellboy and love Hellboy. Is there anything else that you would point them to that you like? That's
That is like this?
yeah.
Oh my gosh, on the spot.
Or anything you just want to throw out to our audience while we have
Stuff
you.
that I like. I mean, it's all stuff you know. I'm halfway through all of Lock and Key. I'm loving it.
Lock and Key. You're reading X-Men, right?
I'm reading a lot of Bendis
Bendis
X-Men,
X-Men.
specifically Bendis.
Cyclops being Cyclops.
Baby Jean.
Baby
I
Jean.
love,
Baby
yeah,
Jean.
I love it all. He's such a good writer. I love Bocciolo just as an artist.
Chris Bocciolo is one of my
Close
absolute
to
favorites.
this, but not quite.
Yeah.
But I love Bocciolo's work.
Yeah.
Is Gabriel,
he
which
still doing-
one? Which
is
one
he
did
still doing
Gabriel
Gabriel
do? By the way,
He did BPRD Vampire, right?
BPRD. I'm a big fan of his. Wise.
I can't decide if it's country or county. Harrow County.
Oh,
I love
Harrow
I've been hearing
County.
amazing
Harrow
things and I haven't
County.
jumped
Yeah,
in yet.
Harrow County. I mean, so different, but horror and just.
Yeah, I've only read the first 2 volumes of that.
It's real
It
good.
is
Are you reading
so
Black
good.
Hammer?
I just ordered that through the mail
I would
yesterday.
love to report back in.
Okay.
It definitely, like, it's in the fine Dark Horse tradition of playing on a lot of this stuff. It's definitely using a lot of superhero tropes in it, but it shares some DNA.
Matthew Colville sold me on Black Hammer yesterday.
Good work, Matthew
man.
Colville.
Good job.
And
Good
I gotta
man.
say, at this point, this is where we have to wrap. We
No.
may keep talking comics, but sadly, we're going
We
to have
cannot
to
do
in
it
the
here.
kitchen.
Do we know what we're talking about next week?
I think it's. I'm down if you're down for hot topics. Are we good with it?
I love
I
the
said it
title.
out loud.
What?
I love the
does that
title. Do you
mean?
want to tell
Taliesin
everyone?
is going to introduce us to one of the important companies that I don't know a ton about.
Slave labor graphics. We're
I
gonna
know
talk
nothing about it.
slave labor, like the same way that some kids grew up on Batman, some kids grew up on Superman, some kids read Sandman. There was a whole, but the goth kids read Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, and we're going to talk about the publisher, the biggest little publisher, Slave Labor Graphics, and their weird history and the stuff they put out and how it's influenced pop culture on every level.
We're keeping going with our October monsters and darkness and Halloween extravaganza month, so you'll probably have some recommended reading for folks. Stay
I will.
tuned.
It's going to be a little tricky to find some of this stuff, but there's some of it's available on Comixology, some of it's going to be a little tricky, and some of it occasionally you can find on a Hot Topic. Not kidding. So,
Still, right now,
Every
go to
now
Hot
and then.
Topic, buy a pop vinyl, and
and a copy of Johnny the
And a
Homicidal
copy of
Maniac,
Johnny the
and be
Homicidal
prepared
Maniac.
to live vicariously through someone else's weird violence issues.
Stay tuned for Ask Your Black Geek Friend. I believe they're doing a deep dive on X-Men tonight, which sounds amazing. And thank you so much for joining us.
yeah, thank you.
I had a blast. Thank you.
Yay!
everybody.
Come back.
Go read Seed of Destruction.
Bye.